Good evening and welcome to the April 21st, 2022 meeting of Cohasset Conservation Committee. I'm Chris McFarland, acting chairman of the Conservation Committee. We'll be running tonight's meeting as we implement Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetland Protection Act and Cohasset Stormwater Management Regulations. We'll be operating this meeting using the Zoom platform and ask the public who wish to speak to enter questions, comments, or concerns into the chat box. Please include your name and address. Only those with a name and address will be recognized. Present this evening on behalf of the Commission are Conservation Administrator Angela Giso and Town Conservation Agent Charlotte Patel. I'll now take roll call of the Conservation Commissioners and Associate Commissioners. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. William Ashton.
William Ashton, present.
Tom Bell.
Tom Bell, present.
Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Eric Eisenhower.
Eric Eisenhower, present.
Trish Grady is not present at this time. She hopes to join us later. And Jay Pompari is not with us at this time. Chris McFarland is present. That gives us a quorum of currently 5. And our Associate Commissioner, Chris McIntyre.
Chris McIntyre, present.
Well, thank you for coming, everyone. Okay, tonight is, as I mentioned, is April 21st. Our next hearing will be on May the 5th. Anything we continue will be to May the 5th, if agreed upon. Our first hearing this evening is an RDA 22-08 for 10 Parker Avenue, which was tree and brush removal, and this was continued from April 7th, 2022. So, Charlotte, if you would bring people on to discuss this. We've got John Zimmer
And Ann Whitney.
Excellent. Take it away, John.
All right, thank you. Good evening. John Zimmer with South River Environmental. At the previous hearing, we had discussed the Whitneys had done some clearing unbeknownst to the requirements and regulations that they needed to follow for work within the 100-foot buffer zone. So we talked about what they could do to remediate those activities, and the commission requested the preparation of a mitigation or restoration plan to basically replant the areas that were maintained when they bought the house, which had been overgrown as the house had been abandoned for a couple of years. So what I prepared was a full revegetation plan, which includes about 55 stems of both trees and shrubs, as well as a conservation wildlife mix to help promote ground cover within the area. And we're also proposing to install several conservation markers along the limits of the restoration area, which will preclude further activities, in close proximity to the salt marsh, which is basically towards the limit, back limit of the lawn. If you notice on the site plan, I don't know if you want me to bring it up or if Charlotte, if you have it.
I can pull it up, but if you have it on YouTube, whatever's easier.
Yep, let me see. I can just share it. Hold on a second. Okay, can you see that?
No,
Hasn't made it yet.
Hasn't made it yet. Help if
now we can.
Helps if I actually hit the share button. Okay, so this is the property, and the area that the majority of the work was done was down in this portion. So what we did was basically this green box area, which goes right to the back property line, which is essentially, proximal to the salt marsh boundary, which I delineated. So there's about 55 plants that we're going to put in this area, which is actually a fairly small area when you consider the size of the lot. I'm not sure if you folks have been out to the lot or not, but so it's going to be pretty densely replanted. And then the series of conservation markers will basically follow the limit of the planting. What we did is, if you notice in this area is actually currently lawn. So we're actually going to restore some of the historic lawn and, try to create a better functioning buffer as much as we can for this area. And then, under the RDA, they'll remove those several stumps that are up by the house and do the restoration of the porch area up by Parker Avenue. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you want me to go through, some of the specifics of the planting plan, I can do that. There's going to be, obviously 2 years of monitoring to make sure we get 75% survival of everything that's planted. And you'll get yearly monitoring reports. So you guys have an understanding as to how things are going up there.
John, excuse me, what does the black dotted line indicate?
I'm not exactly sure what that line is.
It's the 10 contour. I think it might have
Yeah,
just been.
I think it's just maybe the 10, right? The 10
Okay.
contour. I don't know that there's any, significance to that. It may just be that it's a, just elevation 10.
Tell me, John, there's a lot of what I would call incursion, and I believe that's the 50-foot buffer line, the first green sway coming down. Yeah.
Right here it is, yes.
To the left of that, all right.
Mhm.
Is that currently lawn now?
Yes, the majority of it is. You can see, if I zoom in a little bit, there's an existing tree line that they had shot. So that's the limit of basically the, quote unquote, natural vegetation. And then
Yeah.
the rest of it's lawn basically down to it.
Tell me, you will be revegetating a portion of it with grass seed, or what will you be doing there, John?
No, it's everything that's within this green box. The only seed that will be put down is a New England wildlife and conservation mix.
Okay.
So it's all native, kind of wildlife friendly type species. So it's not long grass at
Okay,
all.
that's good.
And how is the ground prepared before you put that down, John?
They'll typically just rake it out, in the areas that it needs to. They don't do significant soil amendments. I don't think you'd need that out there to get the seed mix to grow.
And last hearing, we had seen that there were some stumps that were down in that area. Do you have those located on here?
I do not know.
So my question would be, I mean, do we have them on any plan?
I don't
I'm
believe.
just wondering what the relationship of those to the revegetated area are.
I don't believe that those ones were survey located. There's a couple up by the house that are the kind of the more important ones that they'd like to remove. I think that, and I don't want to speak for the Whitneys, but if they could, leave the stumps in place that are in the revegetation area, then I mean that would be preferable. Or maybe grind them to ground level, versus having to pull the whole thing out.
Right. No, I'm more concerned between the revegetative area and the 50-foot buffer as to whether or not that there was more area cleared than what's being revegetated.
I don't believe there was. The work was done kind of in this area.
Mhm.
You can see that there's a little bit here that's outside of it, but there's a greater area of existing lawn that's closer to the salt marsh that's going to be revegetated.
And is the intent for the area outside of the revegetated area, is the intent to reestablish lawn?
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, that was historic lawn. I think that the Winnies would like to reestablish it as lawn. I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, it is lawn now. It was the area that was overgrown was mainly in this area.
So, Eric, I'm going to ask you to just give your 2-minute spiel on what's acceptable and not acceptable as far as fertilizers and such in the 50-foot buffer. Could you?
Yeah. I think as a matter of principle, Chris, we would not like to see any herbicides or general purpose fertilizers in that area. There are special low nitrogen fertilizers, which are rules and regulations say are acceptable. These would probably be with a nitrogen content lower than 5%. Typical lawn fertilizer would be 15 to 20% nitrogen. Low nitrogen would be down 55% and below. They can be found. And that's what we'd be looking for.
Thank you.
Would, if a determination is issued on this, could we include that as a condition?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's in our regulations. All right. So I think it's actually the very last point in the wetland regulations of Cohasset. So.
Okay. Any other comments by commissioners?
I just like that one thing. I know this is used as a lawn, but still, I think we need to avoid having any earth moving equipment, any large mechanical grinders coming in to the 50-foot buffer zone to chew away at stumps. I'd prefer you leave the stumps and that Mother Nature take care of them. That's in the spirit of the wetland regulations that we're looking at or we're enforcing here.
I think the goal predominantly is to remove the stumps that are closest to the house. And then, any ones that are in the lawn, just, maybe grind them so they're not a tripping hazard for, people in the house.
Yeah, John, we normally don't allow mechanical equipment into the buffer zone as a matter of principle. I wouldn't be very happy to see, I think the machinery that's used to break down the stumps are rather large and major, are they not?
I think it depends on the
Grinder.
size of the stump. I mean, some of them are basically lawn, like lawn mowers for smaller stumps. But obviously larger diameter trees require larger equipment. These aren't large diameter trees. I think the biggest one is maybe 4 to 6 inch diameter.
Would you be able to work with Charlotte and choose what I would call a minimalist approach to the removal of the stumps, please?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Does anyone from the public have anything to add? No? Okay. So this, Charlotte, this is going to have conditions. So would be a -3 determination. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm gonna make a motion to issue a -3 determination with the following conditions: that no major stump removing equipment will be used on the project unless John kind of gets approval from Charlotte for exactly what's going in there. And what was the other one? Oh, and obviously the regulations do specify what kind of fertilizers can be used in this area, and that should be adhered to. Was there any other condition?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Chris, low nitrogen fertilizers are typically fertilizers below 5% nitrogen in the NPA scale of 3 numbers.
Okay. All right. So that's the order of conditions. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second to issue a -3 determination for RDA 22-07 at 10 Parker Avenue, we'll take a roll call vote. William Ashton,
William Ashton, aye.
Tom Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do we need a variance? You submitted a variance request.
I guess we do. Okay. Then I'll make a motion to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer at 10 Parker Avenue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer at 10 Parker Avenue. We'll take a roll call vote. William Ashton,
William Ashton, aye.
Tom Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0-0. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Our next hearing this evening is at 92A Beach Street, and I need to read into the record the public notice. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw, and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 21st, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicant Robert Bailey. This is for a request for determination of applicability 22-09 to remove 4 trees from a property at 92A Beach Street.
Bob Bailey was unable to make it tonight, but he said that his arborist, Andrew Spalt, would be able to call in. I don't see him in the audience, but there is a phone call-in listener. So I'm not sure if that's them, but if they can raise their hand, we can promote you.
Sorry, I just raised my hand.
Yeah, it's okay. I could see if they call in later. I don't know. I don't see him in the audience.
Look like we have it. Okay, we'll I think I don't want to leave that hearing open, so I think we're going to just have to continue that hearing until 5/5/2022.
If they call in later, do we want to try and squeeze them in or just say that it's been continued?
It's been continued.
Okay.
Okay, our next hearing this evening, this is the one I'm going to have to make up. This is, I'm going to read it into the record. It's in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for Notice of Intent 22-12 and Stormwater Permit 22-08 for new construction at 221 Hull Street.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Just promoting. We have Pat Magoon from DeSelberg Sala Engineering. Hi, Pat. Is there anyone else I should promote? I don't see the owner in the audience.
Nope, it's just me tonight.
Okay.
Thank you guys for having me. Good evening. Yep, like as mentioned, I'm going to be discussing 221 Hull Street and 6 Grace Drive. It's 2 lots. I'm going to actually share my screen. Bring up the plan set in just a sec. Let me know when you guys can see it.
You can.
Okay.
There it is.
So as mentioned, the proposed project is at 221 Hull Street, which is this lot, and 6 Grace Drive, which is this lot. Butts Hull Street to the west and Grace Drive to the south. The site varies greatly in topography. It starts from a high point of around 45 to the easterly corner. It runs all the way down to approximately elevation 17 adjacent to Hull Street, which obviously the water is going to be shedding towards Hull Street on this side of the lot. And on this side of the lot, it's going to be kind of pitching towards Grace Road. I did a color up for this presentation to kind of show you features of the site. This gray in here, obviously there's abundance of ledge that I've kind of pointed out here, which made the project a little tricky in some, a little bit. So that's something we had to work with. And there's an existing bit conch drive to the southerly site accessed off of Grace Road. That's actually the abutter at 10 Grace currently uses that, as well as an existing sewer service for their use as well that runs over this parcel. Existing utilities on the site or I shouldn't say on the site. There's nothing other than the sewer service on the site that we know of, but adjacent to the site on Grace Drive, there's sewer force main, water, and gas services, along with overhead electric and communications. And the same is the case out on Hull Street, with the addition of a drain out on Hull Street. Yeah, the soils out there are, not the greatest. A lot of ledge out there, the D soils with a infiltration rate of 0.09 inches per hour, which kind of made the drainage design a little bit tough. But yeah, so, and what we're working with while we're in front of you tonight is the Turkey Hill Run to the west of the site, which puts riverfront area onto the site. There's approximately, right here, you can see the 100-foot riverfront line, which is approximately 322 plus or minus square feet onto the site. And the big one that we're kind of working in is the 200-foot riverfront area, which you can see with this line, which is approximately 18,283, if I have that right, square feet of the site. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're working with, what's existing out there. Here we have the construction management plan. I've highlighted in red, which you'll also see on the layout sheet, the areas within the 200-foot riverfront that we will be disturbing or altering. We have 999 square feet in this section over here, which will make a little bit more sense when I show you the layout sheet. And then roughly 740 square feet at this existing driveway entrance. We have erosion control going around the perimeter of the site, obviously to protect any sediment transportation during construction, stockpile areas, material storage areas, and a construction dumpster located on proposed on site. So we intend to have that there during the construction phase. The construction entrance will propose to utilize the existing driveway here. We have a proposed 20 by 25 foot stone apron, when trucks are leaving the site, to kind of trap that dirt on the tires to prevent it from, running down Grace Drive. We did a tree survey on the site in the vicinity of the proposed work. So we located the existing trees that we thought may be impacted. So you'll see some trees which are size and is noted on the existing conditions sheet. So I've kind of pointed out ones that are keeping, that are close to the proposed work, and ones that we're proposing to remove. And you'll see the ones that we're proposing to be removed with, the circle with the line through it. As noted, I've got a tree removal count on this sheet of within the 200-foot riverfront area of 6 trees. And those would be these 4, right? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. And this guy kind of on the edge over here, which on the landscaping sheet or the layout sheet, we've shown some proposed mitigation to offset what we're proposing to cut. And here's the layout sheet, proposed landscaping at a 2-to-1 replacement, 6 trees removed. We're proposing 12 plantings along this driveway and walkway within the riverfront area to mitigate that. You'll see the proposed building here. It's approximately 3,425 square feet at this time. We don't have an architect at this moment, so that's not finalized. We will need to have one aboard to get a final number on that. As what we're looking to do is kind of lock down more of a limit of work moving forward, as we're still working with the building department in regards to that and what we can, and our building footprint. And that won't really be finalized until we have an architect. So what we're looking for is to kind of lock down a limit of work, and if that footprint changes once we get an architect, we'd obviously come back and amend that, but I'll work within that limit of work that had been approved. But one thing you will see is access to the site is coming off of Grace Drive. And we did that for two reasons. One, obviously you can see the slope adjacent to Hull Drive is pretty steep. The only real access you could do is kind of coming in from this corner right here, maybe wrapping around, which would take some significant drainage. It'd be a lot harder. So in multiple aspects. So we're proposing to come off of Grace Drive, easier grading, a little flatter, easier to work with. And the main benefit of that is the limiting the amount that we're in the riverfront area. Obviously, if we came in down here, the likely spot to access would be kind of coming up through here, which would, disturb the 100-foot area, which we're not proposing to currently do. And then it would also disturb a much significant amount of the 200-foot riverfront area, likely going over what's allowed. So we decided the best option would be to come in utilizing that existing driveway entrance. We're proposing to make it nicer, but still using that same location and coming up through here. So you see that disturbed. That's why that is disturbed. And then coming in here, we have a driveway turnaround, which, in accompanying grading and a walkway and a bit of a wall, which contributes to that alteration area. So our total alteration area is 1,730 square feet. However, we have replicated the driveway area down here. That's approximately 459 square feet, as well as replicating some existing lawn, which is 281 square feet, bringing us down to 990 square feet, which we filed a variance form that we submitted with the packages that we sent. So we hope that, getting below that 1,000 maximum alteration by the town standards, the wetland bylaw, section 40, I believe, we hope that, replicating some of that area will, kind of help get this through. So this is also a grading sheet. So we had some accompanying grading. This is kind of the high point of the driveway. So this water will shed this way and also this way to a catch basin over here. But largely the grading on the drainage patterns on site are relatively the same. This area of the site, it's still sloping that way, water's still shedding that way, and the portion of the site over here is still shedding that way. So we haven't, sorry about that. We haven't really changed the drainage patterns much at all. Just tweaked it a little bit for, use for whoever's living there to have a better experience there.
Patrick, excuse me, could you
Yeah.
magnify that? I can't read any of the numbers.
Yeah. Anything in specific?
No, I would like to be able to read what you're putting in front of us.
Yep.
And the numbers kind of jumping around, and I'd like to see what sort of level and slope we have and all that. Okay, that's good.
Yep. Okay. No worries. Let's see. So the approximate disturbed area on site is roughly 17,041 square feet. That's total disturbed throughout the whole site, including in the riverfront and out of the riverfront area. And I also calculated it's approximately slopes greater than 15% is approximately 1,200 square feet disturbed area, which is in the stormwater application, I believe, that we submitted with you guys. And just for, if you want to see these numbers, see how I got the math of how we got the net alteration. This is it zoomed in.
Patrick, would you zoom in on the area between the existing home to the right and the back of the new home?
Yep.
142. So I take it the number 10 Grace Drive is higher than your than this property?
It is, I don't have, survey information of that, but yes, it is.
And so the backyard of this property is all going to drain down and across the driveway, is that correct?
So the general, drainage pattern is gonna obviously take you from this high point over here, and come down to Hull Street. On the next sheet is our utility sheet, which I'll show you how we're capturing some of that.
Okay,
Not all of it will be, going that where we have measures to detain that flow, and lower the peak rates of runoff. But yes.
why don't we go to that then before we go
Yep.
on?
So this is just our utility. This doesn't show the grading, just to kind of better show the utilities going on the site. So to get into drainage specifically, we have two systems. System one, they're both perforated 4-inch PVC pipe with surrounding stone. I have details of the exact dimensions of each one on that same sheet. System one is strictly for the roof runoff. So that captures all the flow from this 3,425 square foot building. And that gets directed down to system one, which has, is infiltrating, but due to, as I mentioned before, the low infiltration rate, a lot of it isn't infiltrating. But we've done it to the greatest extent possible, but given the soil conditions, there's only, so much that can be done. But we have, reduced or matched peak flows, peak rates of flow. Overflow control is provided by a roof leader here with a overflow outlet at 42. So during events that, this backs up, it'll overflow out. Actually has a detail like something like this, and that will overflow down and then flow down to Hull Street. Infiltration system 2 will capture, actually, if I go back to the grading sheet to show you better, this high point right here, the driveway is kind of the dividing line of the watershed. So it'll capture flows of the driveway coming this way, the whole driveway area, and actually a good portion of this backyard, which is sloped to eventually get to that catch basin. And that catch basin is directed to system 2. And it functions the same way as system 1, with, when it backs up, it'll similarly flow down Hull Street.
So just while you're on that, it looks like the existing grades now have pretty much everything's running right to left on the sheet, right?
Correct.
You're adding a swale or whatever you want to call it in the driveway, that the first or maybe the middle third of the driveway, I guess, is going to be going left to right now. Am I reading that right?
So you can see my mouse, right?
Between the 40 and 39, yeah.
Between this 40 and this 39, are you talking? Yep.
Yep.
So this is everything on this side is gonna flow this way. But much like, if you don't mind, if I go back to the existing, it's flowing this way already. There's kind of a dividing line right here. So in our HydroCAD, our calcs, we've shown that peak rate of runoff has decreased going this way, as well as going to Hull Street as well. But if I'm understanding you right, that you are understanding that correctly. If that answers your question. Back to the utility sheet. In addition to the drainage, we're serviced. All services will be coming off of Grace Drive, kind of pretty much within the building envelope. I mean, the driveway envelope to, minimize disturbance area. We have our water, what do we have? A 1-inch type K water on the far right side of this driveway. Proposed gas service in here, that'll be per the utilities purview, how they deem best to do that. We have a sewer service, which runs keep that 10-foot separation. So the minimum I think is right here, 10 feet is the minimum that we have, that to sewer to the water. So the sewer comes out, gravity comes down here to this E1 pump, and that E1 pump connects into this force main over here. And the proposed electric and communication services are proposing to come off of Grace Drive via this utility pole, with a proposed utility pole about midway through out of the riverfront area, and then tying into the building where it's best fit. And this is just our kind of a general detail sheet. And that's really all I had for you guys. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the commission or the public.
Can you go back to the grading plan and
Yes.
zoom into the house and driveway, house and parking court maybe?
Yep.
Yeah,
Like
maybe.
kind of here.
That's fine. Yep. So the existing grade is between 42 and, what's that? 42 and 30 something for the home. Do you know how much fill's going to be brought into this site?
I don't have it for the whole site at this time. For the riverfront area, it's approximately 1,300 cubic feet within the riverfront area.
Okay. And have you done any test pits out here, or you're just basing it off of the soil classification?
No, we have not at this time. Yeah, strict off the soil SCS. Yes.
Okay. We typically like you to do a test pit just so that you actually know what kind of perk you're going to get. I mean, obviously you're counting on not a very good perk, but it could be even worse. So
okay,
it's
noted.
important to us.
Yep.
This is going to be a shared drive situation, correct?
At this time.
Okay. So obviously that's something that has its own set of requirements that you're going to have to make sure that this meets. The driveway needs a certain width, et cetera. And I'll just mention at the same time that, as this house gets advanced and as the, things like shared driveways and such are looked at, planning department, zoning department, they may all have comments to change this plan. And it's expected that if this plan changes, that you're going to have to, depending on the level of change that comes to this, you're going to have to come back to us, just so you're aware of that.
And that's understood. That's understood. It's kind of our intent at the moment to establish a limit of work, get an architect on board, have them work within that. And obviously when that's finalized, come back and have it amended or, so forth.
Right. What kind of grade is going to be on the catch basin in the driveway?
Likely cast iron.
Just a kind of like an open.
Yeah,
utility grade.
Yeah, 24 by 24 cast iron grate.
Okay. And is there any reason at all that in the winter that might freeze over and that the system would stop working?
I would say no. That would have to be, that's something that would have to be maintained by the property owner though. It's in their best interest. To maintain that, or, they're going to have some excess water on their hands. The way it's designed, that driveway is a low point of that area. So if that starts backing up, it could go to their garage if they don't, act upon it. So it's in the owners, whoever lives there's best interest to maintain that. And that's something that's brought up in our stormwater operation and management plan. That's within the package that we submitted.
Okay. Because I mean, obviously it's in their best interest, but it's actually number 2 Grace Drive's problem if it does back up, because you're funneling an awful lot of water right to that location. And And it seems that the most likely path, if that isn't functioning, is going to be right between those two pieces of ledge and right down to number 2 Grace.
And I understand you there. We have a berm to kind of try to, kind of as almost a backstop, trying to act like that. But that's something we'll try to address, moving forward.
I'm sorry, where's the berm?
Cape Cod berm, it runs along this edge of the driveway,
Oh,
just along this side to, kind of better help capture those flows.
I'm just wondering if at that location and maybe at the base of the driveway as well, if it might not be possible to put in, some small rain gardens or something, just to act as a kind of a safety net in both cases. I mean, you got a lot of water running down the driveway. Obviously you have it currently, but if there's anything you could do to
Okay.
help facilitate the, keep some of that water on site. I'm not sure that's possible, but
We'll look into it moving forward. Part of, I think, one reason of, the more we go into this area, the more we're technically disturbing, I guess. But if it's looked upon as an enhancement, that is something we can look into.
I'm sorry, Patrick, you're concerned about disturbing what?
The riverfront area. Sorry to not be clear.
How far are you from the riverfront there?
So this,
200 feet?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
200 feet or so, or what?
Yeah, so this line, this dashed line right here is the 200 foot across the site. And you'll see this is the 100 foot that kind of barely crosses the site over there, which we're not proposing to touch at all.
Patrick, I see a lot of green on the site.
Yes.
That kind of tells me you got lawn there or something. How deep is the soil there until you run into granite? I presume, since we have the granite outcroppings, where we don't see the granite outcropping, there still is granite there, just not on the surface.
Yeah, so it's not really known until you start digging. I just did that more for presentation purposes to make the ledge stand out. But yeah, given the amount that's above grade or at grade, yeah, you could assume there's quite a bit right beneath the surface in those green areas.
Yeah, I mean, I see the green, and I think that you're telling me, Eric, don't worry, this area is going to percolate a lot because we don't see any ledge there. But suppose the ledge is 6 inches below surface, you're not going to percolate at all. It's all going to go rushing down onto Hull Avenue.
I understand. Yeah, it wasn't my intent to throw you off with the perk rate. It was more for a presentation standpoint to bring out the impervious areas, and that being the pavement and the ledge, and showing that the other stuff is either tree vegetated of some sort, tree at grade, knowing that right below grade there could be, most likely would be, ledge.
I mean, what you're doing is showing us a lot of ledge, but that happens just to be the ledge that's visible at the surface. I mean, there could be 2 or 3 times as much ledge 6 inches below the surface going across, then you haven't investigated that.
Nope, and it's noted that we haven't done test pits, and that I have noted that, so we will take that into account moving forward.
Charlotte, do you have any photographs?
I do, yeah. I just want to acknowledge that we have 2 questions and comments in the audience from Michelle Guthrow at 10 Grace Drive. Do we want to address those now, since some of them are kind of relevant to drainage concerns and flooding?
Yep.
Shouldn't we finish our own questioning?
Yeah, I would prefer.
Okay.
I would prefer we
Okay.
figure the deliberation
Sure.
of the commission first.
Okay, yeah, in the meantime, I can pull up
Keep hanging.
photos. Okay, do you guys want me to pull up any photos from the site?
Yes, please.
Okay, is it okay if you stop sharing,
Oh,
Pat? I can
yeah.
pull up my screen.
Yep, no
Thank you.
problem.
It did take a lot, so please bear with me. I'll go through these quickly. So this is kind of looking at the site from the bottom level on Hull Street. And I'll just go through. This is walking around Hull Street. This is the existing conditions. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow. Oh,
So
man.
you're standing in the restaurant parking lot looking up at this site?
Yeah, so this is walking along Hull Street, just so that you guys can see the existing conditions, and no work is being proposed in this area, but I just wanted to walk around to give you guys the full perspective. Sorry, my system is going pretty slowly.
Charlotte, the proposed work is what distance above what we're looking at there?
So the proposed work
200 feet.
is outside of the 200-foot riverfront area, and then a portion of it is crossing into the 200. So this is just the view from Hull Street. And then this is going upward into the property where you can see all the existing ledge. And this is the site as it is right now. As you can see, it was previously disturbed. You know, there's some dirt stockpiles, and it looks like they may have tried to survey for the foundation because there's some, looks like foundation kind of, they tried to dig like a trench to maybe look at drainage. And then these are some of the existing trees that are marked to be removed. So this is kind of walking around the site. These are the trees that are proposed to be removed in the 200-foot riverfront. This is what I'm kind of talking about. It looks like someone may have tried to dig like kind of a trench around where the proposed house location would be, but I think this was from previous builders or contractors, so I think that was all halted.
Yes.
So this is where the proposed house is going to be. And 10 Grace Drive is pictured in the background. And then there's existing ledge in between 221 Hull and 10 Grace Drive. So this is the ledge right here that's kind of bordering on the property line for both sites. And so, yeah, I took a lot of pictures just of the previous disturbance, and there's definitely
Oh, hold on. Could you go back? I thought I saw running water there.
Yeah, it's like pooled water, I think, from the previous digging, I believe, for the house foundation. And I think it's been there for a little bit because this was a dry day, and yeah, maybe some of the abutters might be able to speak to that.
I'm going to ask our resident geologist, could we go back to that, the pool of water? Tom,
Yes.
what would make that water sit like that for a long period of time, unless there was ledge right underneath it, preventing it from perking into the soil?
Well, I think Mr. Magoon's already pointed out that the infiltration rate is extremely low here. And that, of course, would explain why water from our most recent rain, I don't know when you took these, Charlotte, whether it was before or after. We got 1.25 inches the other day. I don't know when you took these.
This was March 29th.
Oh, okay. So it looks like it's been sitting long enough to have developed maybe even some algae growing in it. So one of the earlier ones looked like it had algae growing in it. So obviously this water can sit for, yeah, right there, can sit for a long time. And that should be noted that infiltration here is extremely low. Mr. Magoon pointed out a number of challenges to this site, and I see even more challenges than he brought up. We can. Am I stealing your time, Eric?
Tom, I'd like to hear what you're saying. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so the first thing I point out is if we take a long view at this, the applicant has failed to note that they're within 500 feet of an area of critical environmental concern. In fact, they checked the box that said there was no area of critical environmental concern, but they're only 500 feet away from one. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. And in fact, Turkey Hill Run drains into that. So any water that ends up on Hull Street or ends up on Grace Drive is going to end up in Turkey Hill Run and immediately into the ACEC. So we need to really be cautious about, I think, the stormwater conditions here, how they're treated, and so that we don't get sediment going into Turkey Hill Run, which then goes into the ACEC. That's not a good thing. So that's one thing that I see. The other one, I believe, both you and Chris, Eric and Chris pointed out, was there isn't much soil here, and there really isn't. All this outcrop really is speaking to how thin some of the soil is, and you can see what soil there is probably till. And it's obviously pretty compacted because it's not draining. So that's an issue as well. One of the things that would concern me if I was in a abutter here, particularly if I owned that parking lot, is there's going to be 2 large infiltration chambers that are going to drain right into this granite instead of in a much smaller area than is happening naturally. And so it's going to focus all that runoff in two areas, and more than likely they're going to, wet water does penetrate, is going to find fractures in that granite, and a lot of it's going to end up in the parking lot. I know that the gradient for surface runoff is from east to west, but that's an old quarry in that parking lot. We've all seen it there. It's cut out like a nice, been done with a cookie cutter or something. And there's quite a drop up there. So much of this runoff is going to end up down in that parking lot. It's going to weep out of those walls and maybe create an icing situation during the winter, after a rainfall, certainly in spring. So if you go by that place in winter, you can see there's already icicles hanging all over it, and that's groundwater, shallow groundwater, that's discharging through those walls and freezing. So this is a tricky spot to build in a large roofed area, large impervious area, and then try to dispose of that water somehow into a much smaller area. So it's going to focus both the surface runoff and shallow groundwater in undesirable ways if we're not careful here. So the plan that I see, I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but the design has to be, it really has to be done carefully here. We're not seeing much because we don't have any test pits except for what we're seeing here, and they're fairly revealing. You get standing water and for who knows how long. We don't know how long it had been since it rained before March 29th. We could probably check, but I suspect that this water's been ponded there for quite some time, days, if not weeks. So like I say, this is going to be a tricky one. We need more information. We need to also consider the ACEC aspect here. I think that fortunately that the architect hasn't been called in yet, because there is a way of building on this site without touching any of that riverfront. And when you start seeing some of the very nice looking trees that are proposed to be cut down, mature oaks, that's not within that 200-foot riverfront area, that's not very desirable. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't really have any questions. I can see pretty much what's going down here. I have an opinion, but no questions.
Yep. Thank you.
About the trees that are going to be cut down, I saw the mitigation plan of the 2-to-1. I'm not an expert at all, but the spacing of those seemed pretty tight. So first of all, what trees were you going to be replacing it with? And secondly, is that an adequate mitigation measure if the trees are going to be that close together?
Actually, I have it on the plan, which I can't. Let's see. So we're proposing 6 inkberry and 6 buttonbush. They can certainly, location of them can be adjusted. I was doing my best to kind of keep them within the footprint of the altered area, but we can certainly work on spacing those out. If that's a concern, we can certainly work with that.
Doesn't mitigation require some ratio of the size of tree if you cut down a 24-inch tree, don't you have to replace it with something? Obviously, you can't put in another 24-inch tree,
Right.
Diameter tree, but it seems like you're cutting down some mature oaks and replacing them with bushes.
And at this moment, we don't have a landscape architect at this time, but I'll certainly look into that.
Patrick, I'm trying to understand what it is you're asking us to do here. You don't have a landscape architect. We can't be specific about the trees. You're cutting down some enormous trees, we think, and replacing with some bushes, all right? 12 bushes, which is a pittance in terms of the hydrological effect. The test pits haven't been done. We don't have a plan. Everything's sort of written with maybe it'll be different when we hire an architect. I'm trying to understand, why are we wasting our time here until you further the project? Because I sit here saying, I don't know what this guy wants, all right?
We're just kind of, sorry to interrupt. We're just kind of trying to get the ball rolling on this, establish a limit of work that you guys would be acceptable to.
I'll give you my opinion. I can't say anything about the limit to work until I know what it is you're working on, all right? What the soil's like, what the tree is, what the perk is, where the ledge is, all these questions that Tom and everyone has brought up concerning the risk to the houses down below. And, normally we don't work this way. Normally we work with a plan that's thought through, that has details, test pits, engineering drawings, a house of some sort is going to be put in there. Engineers have verified it, architects have worked on it, and you present it to us and we say, let's talk about this. Now we have just it's a grab bag. So, if you ask me to vote on this, I will definitely do one thing. I will abstain, because I'm not in a position to take a position on this. So, sorry, Chris.
So Patrick, I think the consensus is that we do need more information. We do need to have perk tests. The planting is not acceptable as a remediation for what's being removed in the 100-foot buffer. At very minimal.
200-foot buffer, Chris.
What's that? 200-foot. I apologize. At very minimum, it would be a 2 to 1 on the trees, but we're talking some fairly substantial trees, something in the 3.5 to 4.5 inch caliper size, which has a fair size root ball, which has its own issues when you're trying to plant on a site like this. And then of course, and I'm going to move next to the people in the audience, but obviously there's some real concern about what water is exiting the site or potentially exiting at different times and under different conditions. So I think that all those things, less so that there's not a house plan, but there definitely has to be a real mitigation plan. And as I mentioned already, if the footprint changes, if something, really changes, then you're going to be back in front of us again to modify your application. Charlotte, can we either read, are these written requests here?
Chris, I just have two things before.
Okay, well, go ahead,
Yeah.
please. I'm sorry.
So, if just to guide you when you come back to us, I would want to see. There's a sewer line that looks, because it's gravity, to be fairly deep along the side of the driveway, because it comes out of the house at 34, and the middle of the driveway is at 40. So just to know if that's even possible, because there may be ledge 3-4 feet down, so you might not even be able to get there.
Noted.
And then just the way that you're calculating the disturbance to within the 200-foot buffer, it looks like it's portrayed as a net of, by the replicated area, but really it should be the total 1,700, and that should be replicated 2 to 1. It's not, you don't net out what you're replicating to get under 1,000 according to the bylaws. So just showing that.
And I understand that. That's why we did put in a variance for that disturbance, and that's why we did that. But it is noted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I would say you're going to get a little bit more traction if you really avoid cutting down some large mature oaks, particularly in the riverfront area.
Noted.
You need to work around those somehow.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to read these questions and we'll answer them however we can. The first is from Michelle Guthrow. I live at 10 Grace Drive. We have huge concerns regarding stormwater and drainage. Our home's drainage pipes run under the 6 Grace Drive property under your proposed construction entry to the property. If your drainage is disrupted, I'm very concerned this will cause considerable flooding and issues on our property and in our basement. As it stands right now, the stormwater is currently eroding the road and causes terrible icy conditions during the winter. Adding additional drainage to this will only make the problem worse. How do you propose to address this?
Well, all I can say is specifically Grace Drive, our peak flow rates are going to be less. And I believe on that side, the volumes will be less. I don't know what she meant about a drain pipe going across. I know the sewer pipe. I'm aware of the sewer.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the sewer pipe, which, won't affect the drainage unless there's some other drainage coming from our basement that I'm not aware of. But the sewer shouldn't be affected. We're proposing to maintain that at this current time. To answer that question.
And I'm just going to read these other comments that Ms. Guthrie also has. I have big concerns about freezing, also causing water to back up onto our property and into my basement. And also, these pools of water have been like this since the summer, causing terrible issues with mosquitoes. So that's what we have right now.
Okay. I'm just briefly answer that. At this time, we're not proposing to, shed any water that way, for sure. Just to briefly answer that.
Is there an easement for the sewer to run through this?
No,
property?
there's not. A lawyer has been hired by our client, so I know they're gonna be working with him moving forward, and the abutter. I am not privy to that at this time, but yeah, there is no easement that we're aware of.
Okay. Well, Patrick, you've heard comments and questions from the commission. I'd like to propose that we continue this hearing for 2 weeks to May the 5th, 2022, and maybe you could come back at that time and address
Certainly.
some of the concerns.
Certainly. I've listened to all you guys' comments. I appreciate them and I understand them. So we're going to be working in the meantime to address those.
So you're going to have a landscape plan and an architectural drawing of the footprint and have a calculation of how much fill and cutting you're going to do all in 2 weeks. Is that?
I can certainly do the fill or cut calc for the whole site. That's something I can do.
How can you do that if you don't have a design for the house yet?
Well, we're working with our footprint that we have. Yeah, you're right. We will not have an architect in that time. As I mentioned before, it is our plan to just kind of get a feel, for the limit of work, what we can work in that you guys would be accepting of. And like I've mentioned, if anything changes when the architect were to be hired, then obviously we would have to come back. And
I know it's easy to look at the bylaws and think all you have to do is meet your peak flows and volumes and stuff, but there's a lot more to sites in Cohasset than that. And what you do with your stormwater plan can have a huge impact on your abutters. This is not a flat site. And so I think you need to look beyond HydroCAD. Sure, of course, you need to make those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But you also need to look holistically at this site and take a long, hard look at it and see who's going to be impacted, how they might be impacted, and come up with a plan that looks a little bit more viable than what you presented tonight.
no, we'll certainly take that into account. Chris mentioned you'd like to see maybe a rain garden implemented, so we'll certainly look into other means to something more acceptable. But this is what we have this time. In 2 weeks from now, we'll hopefully have a better product for you.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. We have Michelle Guthrie from 10 Grace Drive raising her hand. do we want to promote her to speak or use the Q&A feature?
Yeah, you can promote
Okay.
her to speak. It seems, I mean, her concerns have been heard, but please promote her.
You're also muted. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to type and I didn't have my glasses on. So I feel like it's better if I can try to explain a little bit better of what I was saying, which is we have like a French drain system in our home. And so it probably helps everyone to understand that this home was originally built on the entire total of these 3 lots. Just prior to us purchasing the home about 5 years ago, this property was subdivided. And so you'll see that it's obviously very oddly shaped. And when that subdivision happened, there's parts of our utilities that are buried under 6 Grace Drive, which was originally connected to the full property. And so part of the issue is that we have a French drain system that drains out down the driveway, but it actually drains out onto that 6 Grace Drive property. So the pipes run underneath that. And where they're proposing to drive in and out and where they're proposing to put that shared driveway to come up to the back lot is now going to disturb the drainage pipes that come from our house and come out under there. And so I have huge concerns about what happens when our French drains are draining and they don't have anywhere to go. It's just going to all pool wherever those pipes are broken, and probably just come right back into our finished basement that has an apartment in it, which already happens. We do tend to get rain. And so sometimes we get such heavy rain that our French drain system can't keep up with it and the pumps can't pump. So I can only imagine what's going to happen if we've got more drain water coming down in that same area and then continuing to pool there if we can't bring it away from where our house is. It's also starting to erode the road, and it causes huge ice mounds in the winter just to get up that hill because it's all draining down that way. So if they're going to add more drainage to that and more water to that, I think we're going to continue to have really big problems with our road basically just eroding.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
And if I
I know this is well beyond the purview of the Conservation Commission, but you probably want to get in touch with the new owner and start talking about how your sewer and your water might get moved.
We have tried multiple times to work with them throughout this process. None of them have been productive or successful. But it is my understanding, because all of these things have been pre-existing in excess of 50 years, which was when the house was built, that there's legalities around moving our sewer, moving our utilities, and something that we probably need to work together on. And I'd like to encourage, maybe if the builder or the engineer has the ability to let them know if they'd like to reach back out to us and have another conversation, we're happy to do that again.
I'll certainly pass the memo on. I appreciate the info of the drain. And that's something I'll look into. But I'll certainly relay the message.
Excellent. And I will say the holes that they dug last summer have been filled with water since they dug them, which caused a huge mosquito issue. All last summer, we could barely sit outside because of it. And that water really doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there. And we have safety concerns. We have 2 small children. We have dogs. And if the dogs were to get out there and fall in those holes, they would likely drown and not be able to get out.
So that standing water speaks to the level of since it's been there that long and it's been standing that long, that's the water table. The surface of that standing water there. So again, that gets back to the design of your infiltration chambers. You need to be 2 feet above the water table. And you've got an and inadvertently you found the water table pretty accurately up there. So this is really going to be tough to deal with, creating infiltration chambers that actually work. You can bear in mind that we do make assessments of the design, but we're charged with actually the function. So you can come up with a design that looks good on paper, and if it doesn't work, then we all have a big problem. So we do our best to try to understand these so that you need to convince us that your design is actually going to work.
I mean, it meets reduced peak. I know peak volumes have increased slightly. I know, but peak.
That's all wonderful. You have a computer simulation of that. We don't regulate to design, but we're forced to make a decision on your designs.
Understood.
Okay, we regulate to performance. That's the standard. It's a performance standard, not a design standard. And so you need to really, you're going to have to go a ways here to convince us that your design is actually going to work here. You can run HydroCAD all day, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen in year one. I know you'll be gone, but the homeowner will be left with a real issue.
And if I may, I mean, it's being a single family house, we're trying to meet those to the greatest extent possible.
Right.
Good.
Well, thank you, Patrick. We'll, as I said, we're continued until May the 5th, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to, excuse me. Excuse me. I'd like to
Bless you.
thank you. I'd like to mention that Patricia Grady has joined us, so we now have a quorum of 6 commissioners. Moving forward, our next hearing this evening is NOI 22-13 and Stormwater Permit 22-10. This is for 44 Little Harbor Road, which is an addition and a pool, which was continued from April the 7th.
Jed, is that you? And we have Sean from Sean Pavish Landscaping.
I believe Jed Hannon should be on board here. There's Jed.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you folks are aware, we have Sean Papish, registered landscape architect. Sally Weston is available also for any architectural questions. We have those plans available. We made a concerted effort to address your questions and concerns from the last meeting. We've been in correspondence with Charlotte. So if it's okay with you guys, I'll run through the bullets. But before I do that, Charlotte, do you want me to share my screen, or do you have the revised site plan?
Thank you. I can share your screen, and then I can pull up the test pit photos whenever is appropriate.
Okay, great. Can everybody see the proposed site plan okay? Do you want me to zoom in more?
Yeah, if you could make it a little bigger, that'd be great.
Okay.
Can you make it full screen on your computer?
Yes, is that full screen now?
It's better, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll run through the bullets, and then feel free to stop me, or we can address any questions or concerns when I'm finished.
Excuse me, could you
yes.
expand the diagram so that the drawing itself and not all the footnotes fill the screen? Because as it is right now, I can't read anything. What we want to see is the drawing on the left,
Yeah, just the plan for now.
the plan,
Okay,
and move the other stuff off.
He's working on it.
okay, just bear with me.
Okay.
How is that? Is that better?
Getting better, yeah, that's all right. I guess we'll have to,
Okay.
move it, otherwise we're excluding part of the plan itself. Okay, that's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so the first item we addressed, which you folks had a concern about, was the location of the Caltech on the right-hand side. We previously had it over on the right-hand side of the existing house. It's probably too close to the proximity of the top of the coastal bank, so we moved it over to the more towards the front right of the house, well set back from the top of the coastal bank. As you can see here with where my cursor is, between the proposed paver terrace and the front right of the house. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other Caltech more or less remained in the same place. You also wanted us to provide the test pit information and location, so that's been added to the plan, and you can see over here on the right the test pit information along with the soil types and the elevations associated with the locations of the test pits. The commission also wanted us to add in the subcatchments, which we did. You can see there's basically a summary table here with each of the nodes. And so each of those have been added to the plan along with the flow arrows. So I'm sure you folks all know that generally the way stormwater and runoff flows is perpendicular to contour lines. So we added flow arrows to indicate that basically all over the proposed site plan, so it's clear as to the flow of stormwater. And then each alphanumeric subcatchment was added to the plan, so it's clear. So for example, here, you see on the house sub S2, that's for the roof, and then every other location was added. We also filled in the variance request form, now knowing that we more or less had an agreed to revised location for the Caltech. I purposely didn't fill that in previously because I had a bit of a concern as to the Caltech location, so we filled the variance form in to comply with the revised Caltech location and the associated amount of disturbance on the variance form as it's required. I know Sean adjusted his landscaping plan. We had some conflicts, so we'll rightfully admit. We had some conflicts as to, proposed layouts relative to, site grading and materials in comparison to some of his proposed landscaping work. So we've adjusted, he's adjusted his plan and we made some slight adjustments to ours as well. But again, just kind of in summary, this is an existing single-family dwelling. It's proposed to stay as a single-family dwelling. It's an addition, as shown here on the plans. We'd be happy to show you any of the architecturals. We are proposing to realign the existing driveway to be more compliant with zoning setbacks. There is a proposed pool in the back, along with, numerous landscaping improvements, which Sean articulates on his plan. At this point, I'll open up to any questions you might have for both Sean, Sally, and I. Thank you.
I have an immediate comment. This drawing has so many colors and lines. it's absurd to present something like this to us and expect us to digest it. It should only have the elements that we're talking about. It's almost impossible to interpret this. Can you start turning layers off here? And just show us what we're talking about. And that's my first comment. I hate to see these plans that are so complicated. It's like, you know, it's just too much. The second thing I'd have to say is about your soil pits. I don't see any kind of a description about where you might have encountered the seasonal water table.
So the seasonal water table is shown in one of the test pit photos.
Okay.
Down
Normally
approximately.
that would be normally that would be shown in your pit log here. So that means we've got to go someplace else to see this. So what do you mean by type BC? First of all,
It's a combination of type BC soils.
okay.
As far as, okay, so to answer your first question,
What's the red line? What's the red dash line?
okay, the red dash line is the existing house footprint.
No, there's a red dash line that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay,
five-
that's
yeah. What are
sure.
those?
That's the top of the coastal bank. You can see all these tight contours.
Yeah.
That's the top of the coastal bank.
Okay.
Where
What's the next
slope-
one? What's the next one to the west? I know what the coastal bank is. What's the next to the west?
That's the 25 foot setback.
Okay. So then the
Followed by
next one's
50.
50. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So again, you know, so what else do we have here? We have a lot of colors here. Your flow lines, that's great. I mean, that helps, but you were going to show us the subcatchments, and so they must be delineated in another color here, right? What color would that be? Purple? Are those the subcatchments in purple? You got a bunch of subcatchments here, it looks like.
There are, yep. So the one for the roof is in pink, sub
Okay.
2S.
Okay,
Um,
that's the easiest one to understand.
right,
Right.
and then the 4R one is over here on the left-hand side.
Can you turn off those notations? They pop up every time we want to look at something. We get a yellow note up there. You see how distracting that might be? Every time your cursor goes over one of your notes, a big yellow box pops up.
Okay. So over here, you have this 4R, it's in black text.
Where?
On the left-hand side,
Oh, yeah, okay.
just
Yeah.
to the north of the Caltech, on the
Okay,
left side.
so where's its boundary?
Where's what's boundary?
4R's boundary.
It's
4R is a subcatchment. It must have a boundary between at least 1 or 2 or maybe 3 other subcatchments.
It's the overflow from the Caltech on the left-hand side,
Okay,
right? So it percolates into the existing soils below and generally runs towards perpendicular to contour lines towards Little Harbor in the rear.
okay. So your blue line from that Caltech chamber parallels some of your contour lines, crosses them in at an oblique angle in other places, and only when it gets to the 22-foot contour, it doesn't even cross that one at 90 degrees. So that doesn't make sense.
I think what Tom is getting at is that the Caltech system collects water from a particular area of the site.
Relative, sure.
The
Right.
Caltech chamber is your design.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything right now.
The Caltech chamber is your design point. Is that correct? And
Yes,
so it's drawing water from some place.
yes, from the
Which is
roof,
the
in this case on the left-hand side.
which is the subcatchment itself, right? You have a subcatchment, a route, and a design point where you do something with the water.
Yes,
Okay. So that's sort of what we're looking for. Where is the water coming from? Where is it going? How's it going to get there?
Right, and it's coming from, in this case, from the roof. As you
Okay,
can, we can show you on the architectural drawings, at each corner of the roof, there's downspouts that will come down. You can see one in the back left here. And again, I apologize for these yellow labels. I don't know why those keep popping up. But my point is, at each corner of the house, you can see here, there's a gutter tray and a downspout that comes down. It comes down into the Cultec. You can see the blue line there.
yeah,
So that's the flow. Goes from there to the Cultec, and then relative to this property line, it generally goes down perpendicular to the contour lines in the rear of the property.
okay.
But it's also collecting water from the trench drain next to the driveway, correct?
Correct, 100% correct.
And so what is the limit of water which is going into that trench drain?
The limit of water for that is essentially the area around the driveway.
Well, that's the point, is what's essential and what's actual.
Yeah.
And that's what this,
You can see the area on there. It's
no,
it's
we
shown in
can't
the
see it
stormwater
because you don't know
report.
where the ridge is. There's a ridge that divides the property into zones, and each zone flows to a certain catchment. That's the whole idea here.
Yes,
This
I'm well aware of that.
If this drawing should have been done with just the subcatchments on it and the building footprint, so that we can clearly see what's happening here. This is a very busy drawing.
Right, understood. But we also need to show what's proposed on the site plan, right? That's what's required. And so there's driveway changes.
What's required is that
proposed.
we be able to understand what you're talking about. And anything you can do to make our job easier makes your job easier. And so when you load your drawings up with all this stuff, and then we try to talk about one element after another on the same plan, it's very, very hard to follow it. Sometimes when you make a drawing, you think it's obvious, but that's because you're making it. You need to look at it from the user's point of view. And this is a busy drawing.
I agree 100%. It's a busy site. There's a lot here, both existing and what's proposed. So we
I
tried
would
to best
think that you would
capture
have a
that.
drawing for each one of the elements that we're going to talk about.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I would hope that you would have a drawing, a simple drawing, for each one of the design elements we're talking about. Whether they be the structures you're going to be putting in, or the drainage, or whatever it is, why do we have plants shown on this? we're talking about your stormwater management plan, but here we're looking at trees here and there.
Yeah, there's some of the trees are shown.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bell, those are this is Sean Papachio. Those are the existing vegetation. So that is part of the existing conditions piece that Atlantic Coast had left on the plan, which I think makes sense. To your point, it seems to be that the drainage and the subcatchments maybe on their own plan is easier to read, but most of the other hardscape elements are supposed to be, in my opinion, need to be shown on here so you understand what we're proposing. But I think you're right, the drainage aspect of it is probably challenged to pick up, especially the description of the subcatchment areas. I can see that from this.
Sean, we have a great deal of concern on all these projects.
Mhm.
About new work that's going to take place within the 50-foot buffer zone.
Correct.
I'm trying to figure out, looking at this, what's going on, and I can't. I would like to see a chart with the build and the buffer zones, and only that. So we can make it, this is a very complicated buffer zone situation naturally. And I don't think I can do that here, so.
We looked at it last time during the first hearing, there was discussion of that when we
Yep.
pulled up the site plan and description of
Yeah.
existing conditions versus proposed. On the first hearing, that was a major part of the discussion. That was the presentation of the plan.
I'm sorry for cutting you off, Tom.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just looking at this thing and trying to make sense of it.
I do
And-
understand Tom's point. about-
And it's not easy.
I do understand your point about the drainage piece and the subcatchments.
I think, I mean, generally, we're used to seeing, right, a set of civil drawings that goes material plan, layout plan, drainage plan, utility plan, you know what I mean? That where you can pick out specific plans, 4 or 5 sheets that are the same layout, but show different elements, what's going on the site. Instead of all in one.
Okay, so if I could just talk about that briefly. So there are no plan changes in terms of utilities, right? It's a pre-existing house. There's a renovation on the inside of the house, walls in. There's no plan utility changes on the exterior. There's obviously site civil work for the Caltex planned, and the associated addition with the garage, as well as the landscape architectural work. This is a Cat 1 stormwater submittal, given that it's an existing house with a proposed addition. We did our best to depict the proposed layout with the Caltex systems, and I feel as though we addressed all your questions that you had last time and concerns. And if you need some other edits done, we'd be happy to try to do that. But I mean, this is what the proposed site plan looks like. I'd be happy to pull up the existing conditions plan if you want to see that.
No, it sounds to me, which we can't tell from this plan, but it sounds like you haven't defined the subcatchments correctly. If the driveway and the roof go into the same Caltech, they should be in the same subcatchment. And it's not shown that way on this plan, at least.
Well, it is shown on the plan, right? I mean,
I don't see a line that says that 2S continues into the driveway. You know what I mean?
So the driveway pitches towards the trench drain, right? And you can see on the left side of the trench drain, there's a pipe that goes from the trench drain.
Well, I
to
see the
Caltech.
drain and the pipe, but as Tom said, we're talking about a catchment. What area is feeding into that drain?
It's
what
the
we're trying-
driveway. It's the
that's what we're
driveway.
trying-
and the-
That's what
and
we're
the-
trying to get at.
If-
You know,
if-
Right, I'm trying to explain it. So can I answer that? It's the driveway, and it's the 2 downspouts on the left-hand side corner of the proposed addition, which is delineated in blue.
If I may just for 1 minute ask you not to move the drawing.
Sure.
There is I'm gonna not be able to go up to your flow line, but basically your catchment area is something, and then it includes the entire house. That's a catchment area because that's what's going into that Caltech. Is that whole area. Now that's not when we're comparing what existed before, before the addition and what existed after the addition, this is the information that we're trying to understand. So, and then you actually have a second Caltech, which is also grabbing flow. So, and its overflow is somewhere. I'm not sure where.
So it's to the right-hand side where you see the flow line.
But is it just a pipe right off? Is it like a standpipe on top of the Caltech, or is there an outlet somewhere?
I can show you in the detail. There's an outlet. Let me zoom in on it. There's a 6-inch Schedule 40 PVC outlet.
And
What's the elevation of that? Does it have it there?
The elevation is 5 feet below existing grade.
5 feet below existing grade.
Yes, to get below the frost level.
so you're gonna have a trench basically heading towards the bank, right? And daylighting somewhere down there.
So it'll exit the Cultec, and then some of it will percolate into the existing soils, and then, you know, the overflow will head towards the top of the coastal bank. Yes.
Just another,
But if it's 5 feet down, it's got a daylight like out here somewhere.
Yes, that's correct.
and kind of the same question for the other one as well, is the blue line an underground pipe, or is that just where the water is flowing? Where does the actual overflow pipe come out for both of those?
I mean, everything's perking into the soils. We didn't design the pipe in terms of the layout to go all the way over to the coastal bank. I think that would create unnecessary erosion along the coastal bank. So we have it just coming out of the side of the Cultec. And then in theory, you know, it percolates from there.
Oh, I see. Outlet to daylight is not necessarily an overflow if it's filled up. That just means that's what's perking through the soil. When
Exactly.
you say outlet to daylight on the left.
But these systems do have an overflow, right?
I would think, yeah.
Otherwise, everything would overflow back at your gutters,
Right.
Right.
but it wouldn't be at the bottom.
So how much clearance do you have from the bottom of the Cultec to the, first of all, it's a bedrock. And if you don't know that, then to the water table.
So our test pits, one of them was 7 feet and the other was about 7.5 feet. We encountered groundwater right at the bottom, approximately 7.5 feet.
Normally, people that come before us would describe the soil and estimate where the seasonal average water table was based on modeling. Not the best measure, but that's normally what we see.
I mean, we have
There
photos.
could also
which
be
I
any
sent to
mention
Charlotte.
of references to any weeping in the sides of the pits, not just standing water, but weeping, stuff like that, you know.
Would it be helpful to share the photos of the test pits? I'm happy to share my screen, if that's helpful.
Yeah, let's take a look at them.
Okay. Sorry, Jed, can you stop sharing for 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, lots of things open. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So these are the test pit photos that were taken from the rear right side of the house. I'll stay on this one for just a little bit, but there's more. Front right side. And then this is the front left.
And if you zoom in on the rod, that was a survey rod. It's approximately 7.5 feet.
Okay.
There's a pretty healthy layer of loam there.
Mhm.
I stand corrected. Sorry. It's approximately 7 feet.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. And
At the top of that,
sorry.
about 5.5–6 feet maybe, stand it up.
Yeah, it's at an angle, so it's not 7 feet.
In the water.
And it's in the water, yeah. So it looks like you have a zone of iron hydroxide along right at the base of the loam, which is probably marking your seasonal high water table. So and that looks like it might only be 2 feet, 3 feet down. I mean, ordinarily, that would be in the soil description. Do you have the soil description you can show us? I mean, that's a pretty obvious feature. A lot of soil profiles have a really hard time seeing these various zones, but this one is clear as day. You've got bleaching, you've got iron oxides along the top surface of it, where iron minerals are being oxidized. Clearly, that's the high water mark.
You know, all I can say is what we observed when we were out there. I don't know if that's the high water mark or not. It was that's where the existing groundwater table is located as of last week.
Well, that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for an instantaneous measure of where the groundwater is. What we want to know is what the average, what the high water mark is, essentially. I mean, because your Coltech chamber is not going to be out there for one day. A day when the water table is low, it's going to be out there for years. And so it needs to work under high and low water conditions.
Understood.
I assume you're a licensed soil investigator. Is that right?
I'm a licensed civil engineer, and I have a licensed soil evaluator that works with me.
And did your licensed soil evaluator log this hole?
So the requirement was to do some test pits to verify the existing soil conditions. Because this was a Cat 1 stormwater submittal, we didn't actually have to conduct on-site perk test results. But we logged the soil data to confirm that our stormwater numbers, perk rates, and soil profile was accurate. So that's how we approached this.
Is there some sort of exemption here that you don't have to meet the 2-foot rule, essentially? That your Coltech chamber has to be clear of the seasonal water table by 24 inches? Are you exempt from that by some rule that we're not aware of, or I'm not aware of?
I don't want to argue with you, but where the seasonal high water mark is, we verified the depth where the existing groundwater table is at a rather wet part of the year. I mean, I would think that in July or August, it's probably down even further. So we're at a fairly high seasonable water table time now, and it's our professional opinion that we're in compliance with both DEP requirements and the stormwater bylaw.
I think somebody else should look at this. At least the photos. Another soil evaluator. At the very least, those photos should be, I mean, it's pretty clear to me.
I think, just to tag on to that, part of the problem is our bylaw says that the seasonal high groundwater elevation should be on the plans and as evaluated by a licensed soil evaluator. So whoever that was should at least have put their name on the plans and marked it on your test pits where that water was.
Sure, that's not a problem. We can do that. Again, this is a Category 1 stormwater administrative approval with obviously conservation oversight, and it's our professional opinion that we're well in compliant with both DEP and Cohasset stormwater bylaw. If we could certainly add that information that you just requested. In the last meeting, it was requested that we show pictures of the test pits and the soil profiles. So we did that.
Well, obviously the intent was to find out where the water table was. Why else would you put the soil pit there? This wasn't just an exercise to put somebody to work with a shovel or an excavator. The whole point was to collect some data that was meaningful.
Right, and that's why we put a survey rod in the hole when we did the test pit. But we can certainly add that information to the.
So how does measuring how deep you dug inform us in any way how well your Caltech chamber is going to work?
Because we field verified with test pits the soil types to confirm that our stormwater analysis and HydroCAD in the input of the soil characteristics are accurate. So there's no better way to do it than field verifying, which is what we did.
Well, there's a better way of doing it. I mean, obviously you do a perk test would be far more definitive than this, but we didn't ask for a perk test. What we expected was a soil profile that informed us where that water table is. And a one-time pit is not definitive. You want to put in a piezometer out there and watch it for a year, we can ask for that and really get the number. But in fact, we generally accept a professional soil evaluator's opinion, which you are not, as you said, of where they think the seasonal water table is. And usually it's based on modeling in the soil and various other characteristics as well. It's not just modeling, that's not the only criteria. But you can see that there's clearly three very well-defined zones here: a reduced zone that's green, that's always wet, maybe not fully saturated all the time, but it's wet. And then a top oxide zone where that oxygenated water is oxidizing reduced minerals. Clearly that's the top of the water table, right? And that between that gray reduced zone and the top of that oxidized zone.
Again, I guess that's your professional opinion. We can certainly add the information to the plan. We're in compliance with both standards that are required, but we'd be happy to add that information to the plan as well as my licensed soil evaluator information.
Yeah, I think that's necessary.
Sure, no problem.
Are these pits still open?
No, they're not.
Well, normally that soil evaluator should be looking at the real thing instead of pictures. He has no way of measuring anything here. Here you've got a survey rod at an angle.
Well, he was out here during the test pits.
So he's got measurements for how thick each one of those zones is, and
yes.
And he's going to sign and seal that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Pull up the site plan. Again, I think the soil data, at least the rough data was on the site plan. Maybe we can compare notes.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's
so. As you can see, the two test pits, there's a fair amount of loam, approximately 2 feet thick up the top. And then as we go down vertically, it's a combination of sandy loam and gravel for both test pits. And then as you go down further, it's a combination of BC type soils. And then I can certainly add in the groundwater elevation down at the bottom. I thought it was intuitive if we put up the pictures, but that's no problem. I can add that. We can add that in along with my soil evaluator's information, and I can have him do a memo. Any other questions or concerns?
I just wanted to see if I could find from the stormwater rules and regulations. It does actually say that an approximate seasonal high water location shall be marked on the plans. So I just want to make that.
Okay. Not a problem.
Because
We'll do that.
that comes into, it comes into play as to whether or not the Cultec's actually going to work properly. And that's on page 3 of 20 out of the rules and regulations. Hydrologic calculations and estimation of seasonal high groundwater.
Okay,
Sean,
not a problem.
Sean, did you have any changes since last week?
Sean, sorry, you're muted.
Sean.
I'm muted. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, it was mostly graphic changes that you had asked for, Chris. There was getting the Cultec chambers onto the plan. And I don't know, Charlotte, do you have that? And I think Justin had asked for a color rendering or some sort of color graphic. So we have that also.
I can also share your plan, Sean, if you want the black
Thank
and
you.
white and
Thank
the
you.
color.
Sure, if you'd like to do whatever that's fine. I could do it too, but I think we have a lot of people sharing right now.
Okay.
That's the black and white. If you want to go to the color too, you could, but a couple of things, Chris, that we had talked about last time was to try to get that buffer on there a little more clearly. Which it's on there a little more clearly. It does get a little washed out where you see the 50-foot coming through. We could also show the other pieces were the 2 Cultec chambers that we illustrated on the plan. The other thing I think you were concerned about was some of the existing vegetation line weights. It got a little bit muddy, and if you have to zoom in on any of this stuff, you can. If you go to the color rendering too, it's the same plan. It's just basically color rendered. If you've got it right there, Jed. It's a JPEG. Charlotte has it too, I believe.
Yes, I can pull that up. Oh, there it is.
Might be a little bit easier to kind of see the separation of the different pieces. And if we wanted to zoom up or scroll it a little bit down, you could. Really, most of the same things apply. In terms of the plantings, that hasn't changed at all. We still, we're planning for about 2,000 square foot of new plantings, both at the coastal bank and into the 50-foot buffer. And what we had found out essentially with the adjustments to square footage of impervious, we're actually reducing impervious surfaces in the 50 by a couple hundred square feet, about 202. We're increasing the square foot of impervious in the 50 to 100 by 400, but the overall project would mean a couple hundred square foot more in total. That pool is really kind of it's a plunge pool. It's a 9 by 21. It's kind of almost like a double spot. It's a small plunge pool to give you some feel for scale there. That sits outside the 50. The only work that was being done, and I don't want to go over the entire project again if it's not
necessary.
too much. But the intent is anything you see there that's got labels on it is all native plant material, all up against that backside of the house, all along the coastal bank. There are some funny pockets of lawn that get into that coastal bank. You can see the plant symbols we've got along the right-hand side there where you see the existing vegetation hitting, but we filled in those pockets with plant material. Did that all the way on the other side too, around the north side, all the way down toward the edge of the property. That was kind of the bulk of what we talked about last time, I think. You can see
what's the largest plants you're planting?
The largest plants at the size of planting, or the largest plants we're doing red maple, 3-inch red maple out near the street, 3-inch caliper red maple tree, serviceberry, a couple of serviceberry shrubs at small trees, 4 to 5 feet, some American holly at 4 to 5 feet, eastern red cedars at 4 to 5.
All right, so they can all be carted in.
Yeah, they could all be brought in that way. Exactly. You're absolutely correct. The other pieces we're doing are 2 to 3 foot height with plethora, inkberry, sweet gale.
Yeah.
Sweet gale will be short, of course. It stays around 2 feet. Bayberry, beach plum, Virginia rose, airwood by Burnham. The rest of the forbs, as I call them, or grasses, forbs and grasses are typically gallons in 4-inch pots, but we're planting them at a spacing that we like to do ornamentally. So we plant them pretty doggone tight.
Yeah. What is the darker green back by the terrace?
Oh, that dark green is a pocket of plantings. There's an existing tree there.
No, I mean the one that looks like a square.
Yes.
Park.
Yeah,
Oh,
right
okay.
underneath that, what we're doing is we're planting a heavy planting of Deschampsia grass.
Yeah.
We've got like 164 of those going in there, densely planted.
Okay.
The driveway was the existing driveway is very, very large, and a lot of that gets into the 50. So the reconfiguration of the driveway and the addition of crushed stone parking area in lieu of all of that asphalt, we think is really important.
Oh, that was asphalt?
Yes, the entirety of that very large sweeping driveway coming in. It's shown on there with red lines, kind of thin red lines. Very heavy.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yep.
Very heavy. That existing
what
terrace,
about the existing tree line? What does that represent?
is that where you
out by the front?
all the way out by the street? So you've got existing.
No, not by the street, but by where you've squared off the lawn there.
Yep, those are shrubs. There's a bunch of forsythia there. There's a large pack of forsythia there, and we're proposing to remove those. We are proposing to put some lawn in that area, but we're heavily increasing the planting to the east side of that, right side of that, and then increasing planting, certainly again, all along the coastal bank. So it's one place where we took a little artistic license.
Okay.
There's some lawn area to the right of the house at the edge of the coastal bank, and we're removing that. The side of the house on that right, where at one point there was a Coltec chamber there. That's all lawn, and we're removing all of that lawn. We're leaving a pathway of crushed stone there, but then we're placing a large massing of plethora. And what else do we have? We've got a handful of other plants in there. Some seaside goldenrod, some other native shrubs there. So that's an area of lawn in the 50 that we're removing. Pretty good chunk of it right there that we're removing all on the side of the house. Doesn't make sense to have it there anyway. Plus, it's right.
And what's directly north of that, where the leader from your 200 square feet of lawn to be removed goes right across something? Is that a ledge outcrop?
Are you looking at, on the photo, if you can zoom in there, that would be great. It's not a ledge outcrop. It just could be graphically. It's some pretty rough vegetation along the edge here. There is a line of vegetation there.
I just mean this little, if you stop moving for a second.
Sure.
I just mean this spot right here.
Yeah, that's just still existing vegetation that remains. I'm not sure why it's so light there. Might be a little bit more lawn in there too right now, but we would have it vegetated if that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it just might be the coloration of it, to be honest, of the aerial photo that we underlaid or overlaid.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments, commissioners? I don't see anything from the audience. So I think it's, I don't think there's been any, obviously I had comments to Sean, but I think he's answered those. I think there's some comments still that that respond to the test pits that were dug and kind of the relationship of that to the Cultec system. So I'm going to ask the applicant to agree to continue this for 2 weeks. And that'll put us at May the 5th. We okay with that?
Is there any way to consider, voting tonight, subject to receipt of the memo and the addition of the seasonal water elevation, adding to the plans?
I think it's more than just adding the seasonal elevations to the plans. I think it actually has to do with convincing the commissioners that the seasonal elevation and the function of the Cultec systems are actually coordinated so that that we're comfortable that these are not going to just fill up with water and discharge immediately. And also, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, typically these Cultecs do have an overflow. You said that the pipe was not an outfall. So, I mean, you need to show us where the overflow on these is. So the plan does need to be updated before we can take a vote on this.
Okay, understood. We can get those taken care of.
Okay.
Chris, are there other things, if there's nothing else for us to address on the landscape plan, do we just continue it also? I mean, it's a package anyway, right? So it has to stay together.
That's correct.
At that point, I suppose you just vote on it then.
Yep.
What is that date? May
May the 5th.
May 5th. Oh, it's gonna be a party night, Cinco de Mayo, right?
Oh,
Great.
All right, sounds good. All right, we are now continued to May the 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next hearing this evening is for a stormwater permit 22-09 for Lot 5 on Forest Avenue. This also was continued from April the 7th, 2022.
All right, promoting and moving people now.
Yes, unpromote first.
Yeah, they move around sometimes when they log off a lot by themselves, and then sometimes I might accidentally kick a commissioner off if my mouse slips, so that's why I try to wait till it stabilizes.
Let's see. There we go. Can you hear me?
Hi, Caroline. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, should begin. Good evening. For the record, my name is Caroline Weiss, PE at Kavanaugh Consulting in Norwell, Massachusetts. I am here representing the owner and applicant, Blake and Christine Martini, who are proposing to develop a lot known as Lot 5 Forest Ave as a single-family residential home. The stormwater analysis and permit application was presented at the April 4th meeting and was continued into tonight pending some questions. If you'd like, I could go through them briefly. I know I sent Charlotte a summary. I don't know if you received it, but I could roughly go through them or move ahead. I'll try to keep it brief. Would you like me to share the screen or?
Yes, please.
please.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think we got it. So I tried to zoom in. Is that okay? Can you see that okay?
Not yet.
It hasn't come up yet.
It hasn't come up.
You started.
It says started sharing, but you haven't finished sharing.
I don't know. Oh goodness. I don't know what I'm doing. I've had this.
Try again.
You know what?
Unshare and share again.
I know. I can't even find that button and all the screens are blacked out. I am not sure what has happened to my screen.
Can you unshare?
Yeah, I'm trying to resume share. Can you see that now?
There we
Yes.
go. You're
Pardon?
on.
Yes.
Okay. I can't see them anymore. So I'll go through briefly the questions as I recall them. if that's okay. The first was to perform 2 test pits in the area of the infiltration system. And these were performed on April 14th. We have test pit, I'm sorry, let me expand that so you can see better. Test pit 3 over here, test pit 4 here. The data in these locations were similar to the first 2 test pits. They didn't really change the design because the models were about the same location or lower, and the soil conditions were very similar. The loamy sand was found slightly lower in test pit 4. But for design of the infiltration system, I did not feel like that affected the design, but it did confirm our water table and the design as presented. The second thing was to model the gravel driveway, and I'll pull up the subcatchment area. This was helpful. Before, I did not model the gravel driveway separately, and I apologize for that. I did go back and model that with a higher CN number than the lawn. I used an average of what a compacted road would be versus the lawn originally modeled. Although it is modeled as a more impervious surface, the higher the CN number in HydroCAD, the more impervious a surface is. But in this case, it did not change the results for the infiltration system, mostly because it's a very small area. In other cases, it certainly could. So I think it was a good exercise, and I do that going forward. And stop me if you have questions. I was asked to specify the fill material, a gravel burrow, which we put on the plan. Confirm the volume of fill. I increased the estimate slightly to be conservative, I think of 800 cubic yards. And then a foundation plan was requested, and John Teriyaki could not be here tonight, but he did provide this plan. And with that, are there any, those are the questions I had. Are there further questions?
Could you just walk us through this foundation plan, what the finished floors are?
Sure. Well, here we have, I'm having trouble reading, a slab on grade and that's at about 68.5 over by the garage. Here, there's going to be a crawl space. I think he said 4-foot depth, or he has 8-foot footings. And that elevation is about, well, the first floor is about 71. So then there'll be crawl space below, probably down to the finished grade there is about 68, maybe slightly above as well. And that the rest of this is all crawl space, I'm sorry, except for a small utility room near the front entrance. And that, I believe, is about a 6-7 foot ceiling. Let me just see, sorry, bear with me. And that elevation, so the ground elevation there would be 63.2, first floor at about 71, so about 7.5. But that's the area of a finished foundation, finished basement.
What's the current elevation in these spots?
The current elevation, let me go back, is about the 69 runs along the south side or cuts in towards the center. It's about 67 currently. There'll be fill, raising it a couple feet there, but the center right about where the utility room is 67. I could probably show it on the revised layout if you prefer. This is 67 here, existing, and this is 66. And we're bringing it up, 68's about here. So we're bringing it up 1 to 2 feet, depending on where you are. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if my sound went.
Charlotte, do you have any pictures of the test pits by any chance?
I do not, but Caroline, do you have any photos?
You know what? I don't. I am sorry.
Sorry, Tom, go fish.
I did not. John Kavanaugh was the evaluator for us. I'm not a licensed evaluator.
And is that your silt sock at the bottom, or is that a retaining wall?
Correct. That's a silt sock
That's a
at
silt
the very bottom and then at the top.
And so why is there a silt sock up gradient?
I think, Charlotte, did we talk about that? Originally, I think I just had one here.
It was mostly optional, but you know, the more erosion control, the better, especially if it's abutting certain properties. I found that sometimes during construction, people have concerns when construction starts. And so when they see that erosion control barrier as the limit of work, it definitely helps. It's not always necessary, but sometimes in given situations with abutting properties, I may or may not suggest it to extend erosion control around certain areas or, you know, along, you know, any roads or, you know, things like that, at least temporarily, to prevent any flooding in streets. So sometimes it kind of depends on the site plan.
Yeah, and you have the
That's
IBW.
that's an
just-
isolated vegetated wetland, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioners, any questions, comments?
Construction entrance, where's that? And what are you going to do about the, how are you going to build the construction entrance?
I have a note on here. I have to find a construction entrance off Forest primarily. I think they'll probably be just driving onto this equipment area as they're adding fill. I think we'll avoid spindrift, but this is all kind of open lawn. Oh, I'm sorry. And so I did.
So normally we'd like to see a well-defined construction entrance.
Okay.
And what were we usually asking for? 3- or 4- for 60 feet, something like that? Does anybody recall where?
I have this note here, construction equipment to access the site via forest, but
Yeah.
thinking it's going to come in here, but
Well, what we're
Uh,
trying to avoid is all that construction equipment dragging mud out onto Forest Avenue, of course.
gotcha.
And so that looks like it's fairly close to the road and perhaps not enough time or room for the equipment to actually get its tire treads free of mud.
hmm
And
I could shift that over. It's a large area.
yeah.
It's about 80 feet to or 70 something feet to the little bump out at the front of the house. So I did leave a very large stockpiling area to give a little leeway, but, and it is down gradient, but I could tighten that up and push it back.
Well, I think we'd probably like to see a defined construction entrance with appropriate size crushed stone so that, again, trucks coming and going there are not dragging mud out into Forest Avenue. That's particularly sensitive. I mean, that's one of our main arterials here.
Mhm.
So it would not be good to have mud tracks going in both directions here.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think you need to move it over quite a ways.
Mhm.
Normally, we're looking for 50 to 60 feet, something like that when we can, but it doesn't look like you have that much room here to do that. So the farther to the west you can put that, the better. And again, 4- material, I think, is what we've been calling for.
Yeah, usually, well, if it's shorter, it should maybe be bigger, but I know
Yeah.
Steve Ivis always recommended 4 to 6, but 2 to 4 would probably do it as well.
Okay.
We're seeing even the ones that we, when Steve was around when people complied with that, we're still seeing a lot of mud getting tracked out of these construction sites.
Mhm.
So I'd rather see larger stone rather see that 4- rather than 2 to 4.
Okay,
You mean 4+?
4+, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Another thing is we could utilize the whole front of the property, because what'll go in last is that front pathway and the gravel driveway. So I could definitely kind of,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of traffic on Forest Avenue here, and
right,
it's going to be right in the public's view, and also create potentially traffic situations for school buses run up and down that. Maybe, I think there's probably 6 trips on that when you start counting the different age kids in the buses.
Mhm.
So that's it, and it's one of the main exits from Hull to get up to 3A. So it gets quite a lot of traffic, and so anything that we can do there to keep that street free of construction mud and debris would be good.
Sure. I can adjust that, because as I said, I think we can use the whole front lawn. I can even kind of create a little, turn area.
I don't know, it might be better to be coming in on Spindrift than having your construction entrance on Forest Avenue.
I mean, we certainly could. I think I was thinking just for the neighbors being a tight cul-de-sac, Forest being a more
Sure.
main thoroughfare, but we could have it come either way.
It's going to be a burden on the neighbors, there's no doubt about it, but it'd be an even bigger burden on the very, very, very many more people that travel on Forest Avenue every day.
Okay, so would you prefer me to remove that construction entrance to?
Don't you have a little bit more room off of Spindrift too? I mean, in terms of the length of construction entrance you can actually have, so those trucks actually do have a chance of clearing their tires.
Mm-hmm. At
Yeah.
least for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so move it to Spindrift?
That's what I prefer. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I think that's what I'd rather see.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Charlotte, do you have any other comments on this? You reviewed all the new calculations and such?
Yeah, no additional comments, but I will just note that when I visited this site, a school bus did turn around on Spindrift and needed the full turnaround to do it. So I don't know timing wise. I mean, Forest Ave is clearly a more trafficked road than Spindrift, which is a dead end cul-de-sac, but I think either way, the timing of construction equipment going into the site is definitely going to be key here. But I think Spindrift, I agree, is the lesser impacted entrance than Forest Ave.
Well, and parking for the contractor and subcontractors as well. There's no place for them to park on Spindrift, on Forest, obviously, and they shouldn't be taking up parking actually in that Spindrift.
Right. They should probably just drive onto the site since it's an existing yard area, and then we'll have the erosion controls in place too.
Right.
I think that we can also, Caroline, we might be able to just add that as a note, maybe for any construction entrance details. I've seen that, on construction notes that we can just add the, general parking or you could add it as a location, kind of like what we did with the stockpile and equipment staging area.
Okay, add parking. Could the contractors pull in and park on the lawn from Forest? Like trucks, like pickup trucks and such, or do you want it all coming in from Spindrift? It's a little tight there as they get building. It'll get limited once the foundation's poured, but
Can you scoot the drawing over a little bit so we can look at
Certainly.
the spindrift alternative? Yeah, I see what
They
you're
would
doing.
have
Zoom
to
out. Can you zoom out slightly?
Certainly.
Yeah, like they would have to move the shed too, because the shed is already, in the
Mhm.
place where the proposed driveway is. So it's
Looking
definitely a little
at
tight
the-
over there, but
Mm-hmm.
It's just, Forest is so busy.
Mhm.
It's going to be a real, I think it's going to be a real problem for people. We're gonna hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
we could potentially have both as an option. It would definitely be a messier entrance on both sides, but I don't know how that would work, but that is an option. Maybe once the shed is moved, switch construction entrances from Forest to Spindrift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, initially there, I mean, you're going to have cement trucks coming in here to pour that foundation. There's going to be a lot of concrete work for the slab. And so there actually should be a washout area as well for the cement trucks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so add a washout area?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, what are you going to do? Just wash that concrete right onto the lawn, or, you've got to have some plan for how you're going to capture that.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, okay. So trucks coming in from Spindrift,
Yeah,
And-
definitely.
commercial vehicles or contractor vehicles coming in from Spindrift as well. They can maybe,
You're gonna have to utilize the whole property. You're not gonna have room for.
Yeah.
for sure.
Sure.
I'm
Looks
just wondering, if you want them all coming in from Spindrift.
No, you're not gonna be able to have that many.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe just the larger stuff in from Spindrift.
Large vehicles, large equipment, sure.
The entrance to Spindrift is like 40 feet up from the entrance to the site. So they're either going to be turning onto Spindrift or turning into the site. I don't think it matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, say that again.
The entrance to Spindrift is like 40 or 50 feet up from where the proposed new driveway is. So they're either turning in from Forest onto the driveway or turning into Spindrift. So I don't think it really matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least people expect that there's going to be traffic going in and out of Spindrift instead of suddenly appearing on Forest. I don't know. I don't see a good solution to this. I mean, we're trying to find the best one possible, and I think there isn't much room, and so maybe both is the solution. The day workers maybe park on the lawn off Forest, and then deliveries and stuff would come in from Spindrift.
Yeah.
The main thing is, first of all, safety and
Mhm.
how convenient it's going to be for people to be driving on this thoroughfare.
Mhm.
I mean, Spindrift has little or no traffic. The school bus does go in there to turn around. That's right. One of the two of the six, I suppose. I mean, I've seen in there.
Mm.
So yeah, I think you probably are going to have to use Forest for some of it, but why don't we kind of lean towards most of it comes in through Spindrift?
At least specify the larger vehicles. Okay.
Yeah, particularly the larger ones,
Okay.
and the ones that are going to be crossing frequently and creating a muddy mess. You're going to have to have two stone paved entrances here, it looks like. And the longer they are, the better. So what's the story on that? Remember this little driveway here, where I'm remembering this one that 650 feet that you got a new curve number for.
Correct.
That looks like that could be used.
Mm-hmm. I think in the sequencing, I would assume that driveway, at least for the owner, would be placed towards the end of the project, but that area could certainly be used prior, and then probably the stone replaced, I would assume. Maybe a different stone, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking, that whole front area really could be used because that walkway and that gravel driveway will be laid as one of the last pieces.
yeah.
Okay. Any additional comments? I don't see any comments from the public, so sorry about that. This is a stormwater permit, 2209. So I'm going to make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for Lot 5 at Forest Avenue with the condition that there will be construction entrances on both Spindrift and Forest Avenue constructed out of 4-inch plus stone for at least 50 feet if the site can handle that, and that there has to be a designated washout area for concrete trucks. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second to issue a stormwater permit 2209 for Lot 5 on Forest Avenue, we'll take a roll call vote. William Ashton,
William Ashton, aye.
Tom Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, I.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 600. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Appreciate it.
I think you're back, aren't you?
Cute.
Our next hearing this evening, I have to read into the public record in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for notice of intent 22-14 and stormwater permit 22-11 from John and Jamie Borbeau to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling at 90 Howard Gleason Road. Okay. Charlotte, who do we have presenting tonight?
Brendan Sullivan from Cavanero Consulting, Sean Papish from Sean Papish Landscaping, and then we have Jamie Borbeau, the property owner.
Okay.
Good evening. Brenda Sullivan, as Charlotte said, from Cavanero Consulting. I can put up the site plan. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great.
Is that full screen for you?
Yes, I could zoom in a little more if you want.
Yeah, if you could, please. Okay.
So as Charlotte said, we have I think John is away on away traveling. We have Jamie Bobo, Sean Papich, and I believe Mike Tartamella, the architect from Patrick Ahern, is on as well. The address is 90 Howard Gleason Road. So it's adjacent to the Cohasset Yacht Club, actually on both sides, facing the harbor. The project is to tear down the existing dwelling, which is right on top of the westerly border, the easterly property line, and close to the street. We're taking the house down and moving it back, orientating it a little bit more north to south direction, adding a carriage house in the back, a pool and a pool cabana, and is many other landscape aspects as well. There is some work in the 50-foot buffer as a salt marsh from across the street. There's no way to access the property without crossing the 50-foot buffer to get access to the street. We're reducing the impervious within the 150-foot buffer and also within the 1,500-foot buffer as well. We
I'm
have,
sorry, could you repeat what you just said? You're reducing?
we're reducing the impervious lot coverage in the 0 to 100-foot buffer in the lot, going down from approximately 4,300 square feet down to about just over 2,000 square feet. The 0 to 50, we're reducing it by going down from approximately 228 down to about 177 square feet. The proposed within the buffer is the driveway access, which is the same access that exists today. We're basically accessing the same driveway as it is today, having it come up, going to a side entry garage behind the dwelling, proposed pool on the which would be the side yard with a cabana, and in the back we have a carriage house as well, which, as I said, other landscape aspects as well in there. We are controlling the stormwater runoff from both the carriage house and the main house into this infiltration system, which we did a test pit over here and found some soils. Actually, there's some medium sand down below, down about 2 feet. Models were about 44 inches. Weeping was about 58 inches. Puts our groundwater down about elevation 8.3. So the infiltration system was designed with that in mind, with our 2-foot separation. Maybe at this point, I could probably turn it over to Sean and he can go over the landscape aspect of this with you.
Before we get into the landscape, can we ask a few questions?
Sure.
So the red outlines on the drawing are?
The red outlines, this is the existing house up here. This is the existing pool in the back. And this is the existing garage down over here.
Brendan, I think it's almost impossible to discern those red lines. I can't figure out where the existing house is. I'm sorry. You've crammed so much onto this drawing.
Well,
do you have an existing condition drawing?
I can pull one up. I don't have it readily available. I can find it though and get it up for you.
It gets worse and worse on these diagrams, Chris.
Yeah, lots of extraneous stuff here.
So that,
can you see that drawing?
yeah,
Zoom in, please.
Okay. So this is the existing conditions plan.
Okay.
So shows the existing dwelling, the neighborly dwelling, which is part of the Cohasset Yacht Club, the pool in the back, bluestone patio, Bitconk driveway, basketball court, existing garage, cobble walkway to the existing dwelling. As you can see from this, the primary access in the garage is a ways away from the main dwelling. It's kind of set up kind of odd, where you're actually accessing the dwelling from the driveway, from the rear of the property. So we're trying to change that, so make it more conducive and flow easily.
You're tearing down the existing house, Brendan, correct?
I'm sorry?
You're tearing down the existing house?
Yes. Yeah. And moving it away from this easterly lot line. Right now, it's about 3.2 feet off the lot line. We're making it conforming on that side, and conforming in the front yard. The front yard right now, it's about 13 feet off the street. So we're moving it back and raising it. Existing first floor is about 16.1. We're raising the first floor to about 16.5 at this point.
What's wrong with the house, Brendan? I've always liked that house. What's wrong with it?
So the owners have looked at rehabbing the existing house, and it just wasn't affordable. The new house will be more energy efficient, and it's just these older dwellings. There's just there's sill rot, there's everything else, inadequate basement space. So,
Is the house poorly maintained?
no, I would say maybe landscape wise, it might be a little bit. Maybe Sean might object me to that, but there is
I'm talking about the house.
there's a
About the house.
there's a 36-inch tree right here that kind of encompasses the back of that's obviously going to come down. But as far as the house itself, is it poorly maintained? I mean, it's certainly livable, but that's not up to me to, the owners, this is what the owners would like to do to their
Yeah.
the dwelling.
It's
Can we
a
go
house
back to
I've
the
always-
site plan,
it's a
please?
house I've always admired. It's a sad thing that we have to tear a house like that down rather than spend a little money and keep some of the old heritage of Cohasset in place, but that's the market.
Well, it's
Okay. I see it
So
there.
could you zoom in to the new house, please?
the new house. Sure.
Yeah, I want to be able, yes. So you've got a flagstone terrace in the front.
That's a Keystone Terrace. That's a
Oh,
permanent.
yeah.
Oh, Keystone, sorry.
Keystone Terrace in the front, yep. So, and this is the outline of the house here. What I've shown shaded here is the portion of the house that's going into the infiltration system. Because it's only about approximately half of the house is going into the infiltration system, not the entire house. So approximately 2,100 square feet of the roof. And this is shown as the roof lines and the roof leaders that will be connected into the infiltration system.
Why is that, Brendan? Why is only half?
Why is it only half? Because that's all we need to do to attenuate the peak rates of runoff in the flows. If we were to include the entire house, the stormwater system would get much bigger.
So you're doing do I interpret you as saying you're doing the minimum necessary?
The minimum necessary, but still adhering to the peak rates of flow and runoff. Yes. Otherwise, we spend more money in an infiltration system that's really not warranted.
Could I ask you to zoom in one more notch for us?
Yeah.
That's good.
Brendan, if you also minimize the side window that shows the sheets and views detail, that helps blow it up a little bit, at least when I open up these plans.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to maybe have Sean go over some landscape aspects?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Before we do, let's have a look at the test bit, of course.
Oh.
The test bit was done beside of the existing house between the driveway and the lawn area, staying away from the existing tree that we're going to maintain there. We went down about 5 feet, typical A horizon, B horizon. There was some fill in the B horizon, and then we got into some medium sand.
So it looks like things are going to infiltrate pretty well there.
Yes, yeah. We modeled the site with sea soils, even though there is quite a bit of rock outcrop there as well. But in that area, we found a good depth of material and sand.
So it looks like the garage is connected to that infiltration chamber as well, the proposed carriage house.
Yes.
Okay. And only half of the main house. Is
correct.
And then you have all these other impervious surfaces here, your auto court and a patio. Yeah. So it kind of begs the question of where's all that water going to go? Down a
Well, it's going to end up as it does today down at Howard Gleason Road into the drainage system down there. As I said, even though we are, it's a coastal site, but we're matching, we're decreasing the peak rates in volumes of runoff in all storm events.
But you're not doing anything about, I know it's reconstruction, but you're not doing anything about total suspended solids here, right?
We are for the additional impervious, the impervious auto court up here.
Right.
Because we do have an increase in pavement area. So we do have a stone trench for treatment for that.
Okay. So, you know, one of the interests that we're supposed to protect is shellfish. And they're sensitive to sediment, and it's going to go right across the street. Even if it's doing it now, you go right across the street. And of course, the harbor is full of shellfish. So this is not exactly ideal, even though it's happening now.
Well, it does.
And then the other thing about Howard Gleason Road is it's, I believe it's elevation, the road elevation is somewhere around 6.5 feet, something like that.
We got elevation 8 out in the street here. There is a storm drain system in the street. We have a catch basin on the eastern portion of the property over right in here. You can see. And there's another one. I believe the system goes down and goes down further towards Margin Street. And there's another catch basin there. So so the runoff will go into the drainage system in the street and be treated through the catch basins before it does go into so it won't end up in the salt marsh across the street. It'll go through the drainage system and then eventually into the harbor. I think they discharge.
It looks like the elevation of the driveway entrance is 7.1 feet. What did you guys get?
I got 8.
8.
This is NAVD. This is NAVD 88.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm talking about too. RTK instrument or not?
Yes.
Really? That's quite a disparity. We usually don't see that.
Where are you getting the 7.1?
Digital elevation model, 2018. It's the latest NOAA and by far the most accurate they've ever produced, plus or minus 10 centimeters. Generally, we get great agreement between this DEM and RTK instruments.
I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure we're good.
It floods all the time. So I think 7 feet is probably pretty accurate, just given what we see when we have storm tide here. So the point is that all of us have seen this street flooded once a year at least, seems like, and seems to be increasing in frequency. And so again, those storm drains actually work in reverse on these events. Even during a king tide, they can work in reverse. We got a lot of pictures of this area here during king tides over the course of the last year. Center for Coastal Studies has documented this pretty well. And so you do have a flooding issue here, serious one. So those storm drains, sometimes they're going to work and sometimes they're going to work against you. Water's going to come right out of the harbor up onto the road. The point is here that we do have to protect shellfish. That's one of the interests that we're charged with protecting. And it does, I believe, go beyond, to some extent, the stormwater permit itself. So I'd like to see some greater control on some of these impervious surfaces.
Well, we could certainly look into increasing the size of the infiltration system and maybe capturing additional portion of the house.
That'd be nice.
That seems to be that would be the easiest solution for that.
And obviously you want to be at that 13-foot elevation. You know, of course the FEMA flood zone here is at 12.5, I believe.
It's 11.
It's 11. Let's have a look at that.
Currently 11, I believe. It's going to go up.
Yeah, that elevation, the edge of it is at, yeah, these are not, you know, of course, the FEMA flood zone is not terribly accurate in terms of its elevations, but yeah, okay. we'll accept 11 zone. AC, is that where you're in?
AE.
AE, right, okay. Yeah, I mean, so those are concerns. You've got a road that floods several times a year and storm drains obviously aren't going to work there. So you definitely don't want to have that infiltration system very close to the road. Oh, I see you've got your AE sign line there. Great. Yeah, so those are my concerns.
Sean, would you give us a synopsis of the landscape, please?
Sure. Charlotte, do you want to share mine or do you want me to take control of the?
Feel free to share. If not, I'm happy to pull it up too.
If you'd like to, go right ahead.
Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Color rendering, if you want to, would be good, I think.
The color rendering one? Okay.
I think so. I think it's prettier. If that helps.
Brendan, while she's doing that, how much fill is coming into this site?
We're actually, I think we have almost a net loss of material coming out of there. We're bringing the grade down in the backyard. We're bringing that down a little bit.
And is there a basement?
Yes, there's going to be a basement.
And will there be a sump pump in the basement?
There will be some sort of a sump pump or a drainage system to take care of the groundwater in the basement. If
And
that's
where will that discharge to?
well, it's funny you asked that because we were in the process of possibly raising the house in elevation because of the basement. So we're either gonna get the basement above the groundwater and or with sump pumps with the discharge. But that we certainly will have a discharge point. You know, it won't be out to the street. It'll be either an additional infiltration system or something of the like.
Okay,
Gee, we'd probably like to see that.
we sure would. Sean,
Brendan,
before you get into the plan, do you have a removals plan?
Are you talking about for tree removals?
Yep.
We illustrated them on here with red X's. We did note them if you want to zoom around a little bit. I can hit what those are for you if you'd like. We have a series of the big one that we're keeping that's very important is the linden tree down in front. That's the key kind of star of the show essentially on the
Yeah,
property.
but that's what you're keeping. We don't care about that one. Tell me what you're taking out.
Yep, you can see this.
In the 50.
Yeah, in the 50, we don't have anything we're taking out when it
All
comes
right,
to
how about in the 100?
50 to 100. We've got a 16-inch beech tree.
Who cares about beach, right?
What's that again?
Who cares about beach?
Right, yeah, exactly.
I care about beach. What are you talking about?
But this,
I'm being facetious.
I know you were, but the spruce, 24-inch spruce, which is right at the edge of the house, that's the one that Brendan was talking about, the large one that's tucked in right against the current house into the courtyard. So those are the two main ones.
Stop moving and just show us what you're talking about.
Stop moving. Stop moving. We're getting dizzy.
I'm not moving. I'm not moving.
Somebody was.
I was.
Oh, Charlotte, zoom out so we can see the drawing, please.
Yeah.
Just a little. You
There
see,
you go.
Once you look, that's good enough.
Thank you.
If you look at the house as you see it now in white, you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's an X there, a red X, and that is the note that says 24-inch spruce in that location. And then below it on the other side, exactly, 16-inch beech tree. So those two are ones to be removed on this plan. That spruce tree is right up against, I know you don't love that red outline, but that's where the red outline of the existing house is, and that's right on that rear wall. When that comes down, the spruce is coming down with it. The other beech trees start to grow into the linden tree, and that goes away. So in terms of in your 0 to 100 foot buffer, those are two trees to remove, the one large linden to stay. In terms of the planting treatment, The intent is to still have a fair amount of planting on that side, far side of the upper side, which is actually east. Upper side of the page is east. You can see we're at the 50-foot buffer line, that hatch or that dash line, and then the 100-foot.
Yeah.
Loading up there with all of our native species, pitch pine, cedar, bayberry, the usual suspect, Rosa virginia.
All right.
We're carrying all the plantings along the south side of the house, which is the street side of the house, to also be native. So it's going to be inkberry, even though they're up against the house. And then as you come down, we're going to use some viburnum on the west side of the house, right along that edge. Underneath the linden, we're using some fern, as well as plethora. And we are planning on putting it, across the driveway, some switchgrass, as well as some serviceberry tree anchored down there.
So what's currently growing in the 50-foot buffer?
What's currently growing in the 50, it's all lawn. It's all cultivated on it at this point.
It's not a lot of trees.
Yeah. And is that are you showing an existing fence there, or are you proposing a fence?
That's an existing wall. And then on the front, there's some existing fence. And we would come back and replace that fence with a fence.
I'm sorry, you broke up, or what?
We would replace that with a different fence.
Okay. And the monuments near the driveway?
Yeah, it's a couple granite posts.
Existing or proposed?
Correct, that's correct. Proposed. There's an existing wall along the west edge of the property line, or the west edge of the property. You can see it there, double line. That remains, of course.
And what about the apron at the driveway?
Intending for that to be cobble or granite slab.
Not something pervious?
We're not intending
permeable?
Moment.
What's that?
We're not intending for anything to be impervious at the moment, right?
No,
there.
I said permeable.
Oh, I said pervious. Yeah, permeable. It's intended to be.
I mean, truly permeable.
No, it's intended to be impervious at the moment. Currently, that is really the driveway entry. As it comes in and goes beyond the 100, goes on to that other barn garage down in the back. It's existing. There's one existing there now, as you saw.
Is the driveway going to remain, or is it going to be redone?
It'll be redone, because I assume it'll be beat up pretty good.
So there's no reason you couldn't have a permeable strip down at the end, or even a
drainage trench. We could put
a trench.
If we needed to, some sort of drainage trench among the granite detail. Look into that.
Is it? I can't see it.
You want to zoom in?
What? No. Tell me what your AC is.
Amelanchier here. That's gonna be a serviceberry tree. .50 comes across right in that location.
Mm-hmm. Charlotte, do you have any photographs?
I do, yes. I can pull those up. Okay, so this is starting at Howard Gleason Road, just so you can see the bordering vegetated wetland from the other side. Utilities have been flagged. This is the front of the house. That's the large tree that we were seeing on the site plan. Front of the house. This is the existing asphalt driveway, existing stone wall, I was taking pictures of all the trees that were proposed to be removed. I think this is a Nora maple in decline on the side. It's the left side of the property, existing garage, driveway, backyard, spruce. They've proposed plantings in the backyard here. I assume all this existing landscaping would also have to be revised. And then this is the fence on the other side, kind of going around that large ledge outcrop in the back. This is the large ledge outcrop you can see over here that they're not touching. That's the existing back of the house with the pool and the spruce tree that will be removed. Right side of the property, just so you can see how close it is to the other property right now. And yeah, and I was just taking pictures of all the existing, utilities. That's it. Does anyone want me to go back? Have any questions or?
Any other questions or comments by commissioners? I don't want to see any other plans.
We don't, as of yet, have a DEP number, so we'll have to continue this anyway.
Oh, okay.
But if there's no other questions, I think we got a few comments we can make some changes to the plan on and get back to you at the next meeting.
No one else? Okay, then I think we're going to continue to the 5-5 meeting. May 5th.
Was there anybody in the audience? I don't know if there's any, did you ask the audience?
No, I didn't. I saw nothing coming out of the audience. I think we're good for tonight.
Gonna be one heck of a Cinco de Mayo, I'm telling you. Pick the sombrero.
You better quit saying Cinco de Mayo. We may all have, we may all take off.
A Cinco de Papage.
See you on the 19th.
Yeah. No.
Just remember, we're very low fertilizers on that front, and weed killer, no weed killers on that front lawn.
Right.
So you could always think about something other than lawn.
Your famous
Okay.
glasses.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on the 5th.
Thank you.
Okay, our last hearing this evening is NOI 20, I have to read it into the record. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw, the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for Notice of Intent 22-15 and Stormwater Permit 22-12 from Thomas Reardon to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling at 46 Hobart Lane. Another one bites the dust. Okay.
Chris, I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay, maybe we'll just hold off a second then. We can all peer at the plan. Who's presenting? Tom, are you presenting?
Oh, Brendan Sullivan again.
Oh, Brendan. Brendan, can you, is that full screen? Man,
I believe it is. I can zoom in a little bit.
I'm dying here with the full screen. Maybe it's my fault. Okay.
So I got one sheet on, I do have the existing conditions, and then on top I have the proposed conditions. So hopefully it's a little more clearer, but The other site, it was just too big of a site to put on one sheet. So, but maybe moving forward, we start making existing condition sheet and a proposed condition sheet. Maybe even some additional sheets if need be to help clarify and help you guys understand what's going on in these sites. Because I know they do get awful busy. They're, for me, I've been doing it, the same thing for 30 years. So I know what all the lines mean, but I draw them. So it's easy. It's easy for me, but it's not easy when, believe me, I've been on the other side of the board as well. And, reading different plans from different engineers and different surveyors, it can be a tough go at it. I understand that.
Okay, why don't you go ahead then?
So this is, so I believe we have Tom Reardon on the line as well, Sean Papich, landscape architect, and I believe Sally Weston might be there as well. She's the architect for the project. The project is 46 Hobart Lane. It's down near the end. This is the straight run that goes back to Atlantic Ave, and the road bends right here. This part of the road is not built. It's a right of way that goes down to the beach. So we have an existing dwelling, turnaround drive in the front. We also have a garage under on the let's see, the south side. This is the south side. North is basically almost straight up to the page, but a little bit of an angle. Existing wood deck in the back. We have a coastal dune that runs from basically the rear yard over towards the beach. And the rear yard is basically, as I said, the wood deck. There's some granite landscape elements there. We have lawn. We have a play set over a gravel area, which the play set has since been removed since we did the plan. There's also some raised gardening beds down here as well, right up against the coastal dune. We also have a flood zone, which is an AO depth of 3 feet, which is delineated on the floodplain maps. I don't know if you're familiar with the AO zones, but they are delineated graphically. There's no elevation associated with them. It's just an elevation. It's just a depth of 3 feet. So what basically happens is actually seaward over here, we do have a VE, a velocity zone of elevation 20, which is out probably about mid dune. So what happens is the waves come, theoretically crash over the dune, and then the water rushes over this part of the land, and then it rushes over towards Hobart Lane, and then eventually goes down the southerly part of Hobart Lane, I believe, and sometimes somehow makes its way back to the ocean, or I think some of the runoff actually goes down and ends up down towards Lothrop Lane and goes out to the ocean through Sandy Cove. Believe it or not, I think that's how some of that goes. So we do have it's a small area of AO depth of 3 feet. We do have a zone X that would just clips basically Hobart Lane. The previous floodplain out here was there was a VE that came in through about the middle of the property, and then on the backside there was an AE elevation 14, which is typically what you see. You typically see a VE an AO depth when the waves crash, and then on the backside of that you'll see a small, or it matters what the grade does, but it will go into an AE elevation. This one does not, maybe because it rises so fast after it gets back here. But so that's the delineation. So the flood zone, it's very odd in this area because they have a circle around this house, and they also have a circle around the Norris's house, which is just to the south of this. They have a circle around their house and their pool cabana, which basically takes these structures out of the floodplain. Hopefully you'll be able to follow all that. So what we're proposing to get rid of the circular driveway, get rid of the driveway to the south portion of the property. We have an auto court proposed up in this area, proposed house, garage. So just one driveway entrance now, eliminating the secondary entrance. proposed driveway, auto court turnaround area, vastly reducing the amount of pavement that was there previously. So right now there's about almost 4,000 square feet of pavement. We're proposing just over about 2,200. So almost half of the impervious area for the pavement alone. The whole site actually, overall net impervious, it's only an increase of about 100 square feet of impervious. So move to the backyard. We're proposing a patio, impervious patio. We got a screen porch. We have a pervious deck, and we also have a small in-ground pool, 12 by 30 pool, which does go into the 50-foot buffer. There's also a couple smaller retaining walls that go into the 50-foot buffer to retain some of the terrace work in the backyard. The existing width of the house was more or less maintained, as well as the grading on the sides, being aware of the AO floodplain and how it comes in and is the water is going to be during the 100-year event. The water would come up and go around either side of the house over to Hobart and then eventually go down the street. So we are proposing getting rid of the existing planting beds, taking up, as I said, the existing play set has been removed, take up that gravel area and replace this with about approximately 3,100 square feet of mitigation plantings.
I'm sorry, what is being removed that you're mitigating?
The raised planting beds, which were down in this area. So all the raised planting beds and the play set and gravel area over in this area, which butt right up against the coastal bank.
So you're removing man-made materials and mitigating for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Once again, similar to 90 Howard Gleason, capturing the rear portion of the house to go into the infiltration system. We were out there as late as this morning doing test pits. We did 2 test pits in the backyard. Test pit over in this area revealed actually probably a portion of the old septic system. A lot of Title V sand. We went down approximately 6 feet. No signs of water modeling or standing or weeping. Same thing down in this area, except that we did run into we got below the Title V sand and got into the gray beach sand. We went down approximately 6 feet. This hole, we had a smaller machine. This hole was caving. We couldn't get down too much deeper than the 6 or 7 feet. This one, the beach sand held this wall, so we get down to approximately, I believe it was 8 feet. Didn't hit any water, no modeling down in this area here too. So it was consistent with what we assumed. And same as what we did when we did the Norris's property next door. We didn't run into any ledge. And it was basically just all sand subgrade. So for stormwater wise, designing the stormwater, basically divided the lot in half. The half of the lot going to the coastal dune and the rest of the front portion of the house going to the Hobart Lane. So 2 design control points, and we made sure that the flows and volumes were less going in both directions. And I think that's about it.
Brendan, could you review, please, the reason for the mitigation planning again, please?
So the mitigation is to get rid of the man-made structures and to also mitigate the area of the pool and patio that's within the 50-foot buffer.
Oh, okay. You know that there's no soil there. That is primarily gravel. For someone who's tried for many years to grow something there, where your mitigation planning has no soil, it's gravel and sand for the most part. You're going to have to bring in large quantities of soil. I suppose that's in your plan.
Sean could probably talk about the species and what he's planning on putting down there.
Yeah.
I can't speak to that if you'd like, Eric.
Sean, I don't know if now is appropriate or not.
It could be later. It could be later when we talk about
Later. I said we can delay it. There's no rush.
Yeah, once again, we don't have a DEP number for this one as well, so we'll have to continue this one to Cinco de Mayo as well.
Charlotte,
Yeah,
Charlotte, is it typical to actually have a hearing before you have a DEP number?
Double check on, but we definitely need one by the time an order of conditions is issued because it has to be written in the order of conditions. But normally DEP is pretty quick, so I'm not sure what the delay is for these two projects. Usually get it within a week or two of submission. Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we're starting to see delays.
Yeah, no, we are starting to see delays. When we have been ever since, COVID hit us. I've emailed to try and get some DEP numbers. They're low on staff. We started doing e-filings, which
Right, I was going to ask about that. Is that running into issues? Because I noticed you submitted, Cavanero submitted some electronic submissions previously, but then I've noticed that you kind of gone back to the regular one.
Yeah, just because I like I'm old school. I like looking at the hard copies. And to tell you the truth, the e-filing can be cumbersome. Caroline's done a few for me, and she's double paid a couple of times because it's odd. You would think, because you don't, for some reason, they want your credit card information before they tell you how much you owe.
Oh.
So sometimes you put in there that you're doing a category 1, then you go to pay, and you go to pay it, and then it asks you what you're doing, and you put in category 1, and now category 1 is in there twice. So it's not very clear. Now that it does give you your DEP number fairly quickly, but I thought we were maybe beyond that. I thought the state offices were opening, but like I said, I looked on the website, and for some reason these were submitted April 7th or 9th, and yet the one that Brian Joyce submitted 3 days after has a DEP number. So.
Right. Yeah, I know that's the trade-off with the electronic DEP system is
Right.
the DEP number faster if you complete the application correctly, but then there's all these other issues. And they haven't transferred every type of submission to this portal yet. So, yeah.
And to answer your question, Chris, we've presented plenty of notice of intents without a DEP number, obviously, but you can't close it or issue an order without a DEP number. So we just realized it's going to be continued.
Okay. Can you estimate where the front setback is on this property?
The front setback?
Yeah.
So as far as the front yard setback?
Yes.
So down on my chart, I did put the chart on here. So the front setback I had is incorrect, and we do have to shrink the house by about 2.5 feet. Because I don't know if you're aware or not, but so the front yard setback in this zone, it's an RC district, the front yard setback is 30 feet. But when you abut away that's less than 40 feet, the front yard setback is measured from the center line of the road, and you add 20 feet. So basically our front yard setback is 40 feet, and we are 37.3 feet from the front yard. So this garage, so what we're going to do is probably take half a foot off the garage and a foot off of this connector in between, or 2 feet off, and make up. So the garage will be pushed back approximately 2.5 feet.
And how many car garage is that?
It's a 2-car garage. Right now I believe I want to say 24.5, and we're going to go down to 24. It's a 2-car garage side entry here, and then I believe there's a back entry here. There's some treads for maybe like a lawnmower or storage or a kid's bicycles to go in the back of the garage here.
That's correct. It's just for storage.
I mean, I'll be totally blunt. The reason I'm asking is that, quite typically the 50-foot buffer is a no-build zone, and we've got an infiltration system sitting in there. We have half a pool sitting in there, and we have some other things which I'm not 100% sure what they are. some retaining walls and whatever. So, I mean, I understand that, you know, that some mitigation has been proposed as to make up for that, but, you know, I really think that this is a situation where maybe another pass at, you know, organizing the site a little differently and seeing if it's possible to you know, to push everything outside the 50. This is, you know, this is as critical a buffer zone as any. And personally, I'd like to see everything, you know, I'd like to see another pass at this to see what can be done.
And you're replacing pervious structures, a pea gravel and a raised garden bed, with impervious structures, a pool and well, I don't know how we categorize the Coltech chamber, but it's certainly less pervious than what you're replacing.
Well, Tom, if I could say at least the gravel that is there, that is obviously it is pervious, but in that location, at least right against the coastal dune, we're introducing about 3,100 square foot of some mitigation plantings. Eric had asked the question, you know, what are we going to be able to get into for soil? He's former owner of this property, so he knows that area like the back of his hand, and he knows those garden beds, and that's probably why he has the raised garden beds. So if we cannot get soil in there that's appropriate to grow with some of the native plants that we have on our list, and I do believe some of them, even if we had sand or a sandy loam in there, that would, given the treatment we did on the dune next door, where we added sand and brought beach grass into that dune and vegetated that dune where it was not nearly as vegetated as it was prior to us being there. So I will say that we're not putting impervious surfaces at the area where that crushed stone is all I wanted to point out.
So maybe I misunderstood. I thought that you're trading off the raised bed in the playset area. Looks like there's even maybe a spa there, something circular in any case, with a swimming pool.
Well, I'd say that square footages are not remotely close to each other is where I'm going with that is. And this site had already been developed all the way up into the dune at this point. So I do understand, obviously, we're working with the 50-foot line there. So I know we're showing an encroachment into the 50.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, that's the point is how far you're encroaching into the 50 and what are you actually putting there.
Well, exactly. That's the point where I'm getting at right now. So we are proposing to go in there, but it's not anywhere equal to the 3,100 square feet. So of plantings that we're proposing.
Yeah. Sean, you're very familiar with that area where you're proposing the planting. It's primarily sand and gravel. There's very little soil.
Mm-hmm.
Without any amendment to that, most plants would not survive, and continuous watering. There is a great deal of what I would call natural flora in the area, maybe not the highest quality. And it serves a great deal of protection in the case of storms coming over the top.
Right.
That lower area going down into the berm is protected by a great deal of rather heavy growth on the side of the going down the slope into the berm there. Doesn't really need to have any planning. It's natural the way it is. But the other issue is the issue of building in the 50-foot buffer zone, which it's been a long time since we've allowed new construction in the 50-foot buffer zone. Matter of fact, I can't remember when we've done that, Chris. We've allowed construction in areas where in the 50-foot, there's been a tear down and has already had construction in it before. But to do virgin building in the 50-foot, I can't remember when we allowed that. So that's the kind of issues we're facing here.
Did I understand?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Trish.
That's okay. I'm looking at my notes and I'm not sure if I took the wrong ones down, but did I understand that there's a net increase of 100 feet altogether of impervious in this plan?
Yes. And most of that, like I said, is the existing driveway that's being removed. Like I said, it's almost 3,900 square feet. With the proposed driveway is about 2,200. So it's almost half.
I think the question and answer were convoluted, because I think
I understood it though. I don't, yeah.
I didn't. That's you asked if there was an increase in
the whole net. They did decrease it on the driveway, but overall the project plan, there's an increase in the impervious. Is that correct?
Yes.
Brenda, I think we put the numbers on the side a little bit over to the left.
Yeah, that's the so that's the square foot impervious coverage within the 0 to 50 and 50 to 100 foot buffer in the back. The total impervious areas are in the stormwater report. But as you can see, we're increasing the 0 to 50 just over 400 square feet. And we're increasing between the 50 and the 100 about 2,300 square feet. So
what is the initial 45 square feet in the 50-foot buffer?
That's some of the bordering, the place that there's a few stones over here and this timber border around the place set. Really about it.
That timber border is 45 square feet?
Well, yeah, it runs along over here, and there's some I don't know if there's stepping stones or something that's down in this area here.
There's some stones in that area. You can see where it's a stone.
Yeah.
So basically all that area is gravel, it looks like, except for the raised beds, which would be soil.
Correct.
Yes.
And underlying it is gravel, is that right?
Yes, most likely.
Okay, so it's fairly pervious then, right?
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay.
Probably. But we don't know the makeup of it 100%.
Yeah. Could be ledge.
Yeah. Don't think it is there, but it's not vegetated. And whether or not it could be with some sandy loam, just some sand, and with beach grass, perhaps, I think that there would be an improvement there. I do know if you take a hard line of only saying, well, don't touch anything inside the 50, don't ever put a structure inside the 50, don't think about the site, don't consider any specific site, just have a simple rule of assume nothing exists, stay out of the 50, then obviously we haven't done that because we're proposing some amount into the 50, I think about 400 and some square feet in total. But if you look at the disturbance of the site all the way to the edge of the dune of what's there now, and consider the other improvements that are being made from a planting standpoint, I think considering everything in total would make sense. The other thing that could be possible right now, that the terrace behind the house is considered to be a stone terrace. That could be permeable. It could be a permeable stone setting if we did that. And that itself, to me, would offset the fact there's a physical distance between the proposed edge of the swimming pool and edge of the dune of less than 50 feet.
So you're replacing
Sean,
pervious stuff, pervious area with impervious in the 50.
No. I mean that's not what we're proposing. Your point.
Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I see a swimming pool that would be considered impervious, I believe, right?
We are putting that into the 50, correct?
Yeah, and it looks like there's a patio there. Is that the stone patio you were referring to? North, up, map north, we'll call it.
Yes.
Of the swimming pool.
Yep.
Yeah, right along that 50-foot line. What is all that? Is that pervious or impervious?
No, that's impervious there.
What is it? What's it made out of?
It'd be stone, and then you've got a counter, a grill area. Just on the call it the north side of the pool, correct?
That's
Right, this area in here.
Yeah, well, some of it's obviously impervious. I imagine that,
So if it helps.
Barbecue area.
yeah. You know, obviously the grill's not, I don't know what you mean there about a grill. We're not talking about a Weber kettle here. It looks like it's probably an outdoor kitchen of some sort, right?
Yeah, I said out.
Countertops and
Correct.
all that. Okay.
Yep.
And so if we proceed farther north, you've got your infiltration chamber.
Correct.
Okay.
Sean, I'd just like to say, because you've been in front of this commission enough times, and there is kind of a hard line, but the hard line says, in a rare and unusual circumstance, the commission can consider the violation of the 50-foot buffer up to, I believe it's 1,000 square feet. That's what it says. Now, what the applicant has the obligation to prove to the commission, one, that this is a rare and unusual circumstance, and two, that the improved condition of the 50-foot buffer is truly an improvement for the function of what the buffer is doing, which is protecting the resource area. Now, one, at this point, I'm not sure I see anything that appears rare and unusual to me. Second of all, we have a very a previous owner of the home who happens to be a master gardener who actually suggests that there would have to be major soil improvements to get mitigation planting to live here, and actually it might even be destructive of some of the native plants that are already there. So I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. I think that this really needs a sit down by the design team to really go back and think about whether or not this plan addresses the conditions of our bylaws in a manner that you feel proves that the buffer has been improved.
Right.
And since we don't have a DEP number anyway, I'm going to recommend that we, unless someone else has something to add, I'm going to recommend that we continue this hearing until Cinco de Mayo.
Be a great holiday.
One thing to clarify is we weren't getting into the existing plantings that Eric was describing that are in the dune. Those are to remain. He may be describing some other plants, but there are plants that he was talking about do provide a nice buffer in the dune that would be to the right of what is shown here graphically of our plantings. So we're not getting to those. We weren't proposing to remove those. So let's at least make sure we don't have that sort of, if we don't have that sort of story.
John, I'm sorry, we haven't given you a chance to go through your presentation, but my issue was we have prohibition on altering in the 50-foot area, and that precludes bringing in soil and fill. We need to go through your list of plants and look at those and see which one can survive without any amendment to the stone and the gravel that's there. I'm sure there's some that can. Leave it at that.
Eric, just as a point of clarification, the soil that is there in the raised beds, I believe you brought in, correct?
Yeah, they're great beds while he lasted.
Yeah.
Right.
It's grass.
Construction that you had done in the at the edge of the dune. I mean,
Those beds weren't
Couldn't
put
do
there by me, just to be clear.
Oh,
Probably
no, no, no.
do
I
today.
make it very clear. Those came in with the approval of the conservation agent 12 years ago, all right? Because nothing would grow in that area. You know, it's just because it is what it is.
Yeah, no, and
rubble.
we're proposing to make sure that we can grow what would grow there naturally. That was my only point.
Okay, that's fair.
We don't necessarily have to go through the landscape plan tonight if we're continuing, and we've already kind of talked about it philosophically at least.
Yeah.
And we've talked about each of the different improvements. If you want to see a pretty picture, you'll certainly see it. But if we're talking about nuts and bolts, and we'll have to decide whether or not we think we can convince you that 3,000 square feet of mitigation plantings and perhaps even permeable patio validates having 400 square feet or 479 square feet of impervious into the 50. And I don't know that we can do that, but we think it does.
I think you need Sean and Mr. Reardon to consider that we continuously, for years, I've been on the commission, 4.5 years, have prevented any penetration with new construction into the 50-foot buffer zone, project after project. All of your people we know up and down Jerusalem Road and Atlantic have not been allowed to do this. And I think we have a sense of having to maintain our standards and to treat everybody equally. And we've done this, and we've been fairly thorough because of our belief. We didn't want to expand in that area. So this isn't the first project. It isn't the first time, certainly, that we've run into this issue.
So may we continue this until May 5th?
Oh, Cinco.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Did we lose someone? Okay, there we go.
I haven't fallen asleep yet.
Well, that's nice.
Only because we were talking about your old house, huh?
I think you're right. It's my raised beds. I got a letter from Paul Shea letting me put them in place. I think I'm going to frame it.
Okay. We do have a couple matters of business. We have some people still in the audience as well, just so everyone knows. Our next order of business is for approval of minutes from the April 7th meeting. Has anyone had a chance to review? Does anyone have any comments?
I have no changes of merit.
No, looks good.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 7th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second to approve minutes from April 7th. We'll quickly run through. William Ashton,
William Ashton, aye.
Tom Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, I.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote, the minutes are approved 600. Reports from the conservation agent, starting with the vernal pool certifications.
Sure, yeah, before I get to those real quick, I think this might have been taken off the agenda, but if anyone has any comments about the 171 South Main or 205 Atlantic Ave order of conditions, they both had special conditions and they're in OneDrive. The deadline for issuing those is April 28th. So I think a few of you have looked at them already, but if you guys have any comments, just let me know. And yeah, vernal pools, Tom, happy to feel free to jump in here, but I think we have some good news. We did go to some town-owned parcel locations where I think we might be able to meet the certification standards. So fingers crossed, but I think we're about a year behind still with certifications with NHESP. So I guess we'll just see what happens when we submit everything. And
What
And
happened,
then,
what happened to the possible vernal pool on,
136.
so, Tom, I've been meaning to give you an update about this as well. So I actually went out with John Zimmer. He didn't charge the property owners because he was really curious as well. We went out last week, and I went out a couple weeks before that. We haven't found anything. There's a lot of detritus and leaves, and there's a lot of shade. And so, John kind of suggested that they may not be the best suitable conditions. We walked both the IVW and the BVW. But he did suggest, just to make sure we're covering our bases, to check back in May for anything. And, we didn't see any eggs, no egg masses, tadpoles. I've heard 1 to 2 wood frogs in the background, but that's about it. So,
this was Lambert's Lane?
oh, I'm sorry. This was 136 Atlantic Ave, sorry. This was a part of our order of conditions to investigate it for the vernal pool locations.
Was this the one with the shed next door property, and this was the
Yes.
swimming pool? Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we haven't found anything. I've been there 3 times now and nada. So I'll check.
How about that Forest Avenue one that you went out with?
Yeah.
What happened there?
Yeah. So the Conservation Trust, the Cohasset Conservation Trust, purchased some lots on Forest Ave. I think it's like 60 Forest Ave. There's the property owner, and then so I went there. There is a wetland that's in between some of those properties where the Conservation Trust recently bought land there, and I found 30 plus egg masses in that location. So I was like, I couldn't even count them all. And surprisingly, Tom, they were in deeper water, like really deep. I'm talking like waist deep water. In phragmites and small branches. They were just clumps everywhere. So I tried to take pictures of each of them, and then there were some along the edge. So that one, it was like a very bright beacon saying this is a vernal pool. So that's good news. And then the 2 others that we think we found are on town-owned properties. I found 5 egg masses, which is the minimum qualifications for egg masses at one of the potential vernal pool locations behind the Little League ball fields. The other one is really overgrown with briars, so it's really hard to get to it, but I'll keep trying. But so that's another one. And then Tom, I think we think we can do Skater Pond at Wheelwright Park, even though it's a man-made pond. The outfall has been kind of blocked for a while, and we found multiple egg masses in there as well. So it definitely meets the qualifications. So those are some so far that we think we can certify.
You're being trained very well, Charlotte.
We're trying, yeah. We've Tom and I both talked to someone from NHESP who's been very helpful. And then, again, John Zimmer was great with helping me out with Atlantic Ave just because he was curious. So I'm getting a lot of practice. And Tom, I think you got practice too on your end with wood frog recordings and everything. So yeah.
What clues you into going to a particular place?
What I did was I took the digital elevation model for the town, contoured it, and then started looking for closed contours. And once I had identified the areas with closed contours, then I compared that to the aerial photos, and if I could see water, then it was a candidate to investigate. And those ponds that had a perennial stream as an outlet would be ruled out. So that's one of the filters. You can have an outlet at Skating Pond is fine. It just can't be a perennial stream.
Right. Yeah.
That's the threshold. So, you kind of expect that most of those areas with closed contours would hold water, and they do. The problem is some of them only hold 2 or 3 inches of water. Now they'll hold it for a long time, but it looks like depth might be important here.
Interesting.
Yeah, some locations
Depth, and there's another thing that I think is important, and that is having a large area, a large undisturbed area. I think where we've looked between houses that are already built up, those frogs can't survive crossing the road. Frogs and salamanders trying to get across the road, they turn into, pancakes.
I think we need to put a stoplight in place. Stop sign?
Yeah, well, some places do it. Some places close whole roads.
Watch for the salamanders.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the salamanders and wood frogs also need a very non-disturbed way to get to the vernal pool. So yeah, again, if it's like roads and I think tons of briar and rocks and everything that make it almost impossible to come down from a woodland area to get into those locations might play into that as well. So yeah, I feel like maybe we can compare all the sites that were duds versus hits and see if there's any variables that might kind of compare across the board. But yeah, I think water depth is definitely one of them. And then being able to hold that water for enough for the springtime.
And then enough surrounding habitat. Remember that John Zimmer was arguing that they're only going to take out 100 feet of terrestrial habitat for these amphibians. And I think that 100 feet isn't very much, 100 square feet isn't very much, and I'm sure it wouldn't have an impact one way or another. But when you look at that neighborhood, there is a fairly large woodland that is nearby. And so I think that's what's really an important aspect. There has to be habitat. It's not just breeding habitat, it's existence habitat. Where can they go off and find a nice, cool, wet place to avoid their predators and find whatever they are eating, as adults. So
I was curious because right behind the tennis courts at Milliken Field is a big body of water that it's maybe in August once in a while it dries up, but sometimes it's 2 feet deep. And I went back there trying to look around, but I didn't really see anything. But I do understand that the high school is looking at plans for rebuilding, and they're actually considering rebuilding on Milliken and then repurposing the high school land as ball fields.
Is this off of North Main, Chris, or?
No, it's up off of Hilltop and Bancroft.
Oh, okay.
Tom, isn't the key finding the presence of wood frogs and they're singing and off in the distance? Because to me, that's the easiest criteria.
Yeah, that's one of the things. And I've identified 3 were listed as potential vernal pools, and all of them had singing wood frogs. 2 of them had quite a chorus going, and one of them was a bit sparse. There might only have been 3 or 4 frogs in that one. So I don't know, that one probably is not going to get certified. But the other 2, there were so many frogs that you couldn't tell how many there were. They were everywhere.
That's the criteria, by the way. You have to hear enough so that you can't count them when you listen to the recording. It has to be, like a chorus. It has to be like you can't tell the number.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I should go back to those and see if I can get some get an egg count.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of miserable going because there's a lot of briars back there, and it's not much fun. A lot of ticks. There seem to be ticks on every briar. So about every 5 steps, I'd have to stop and start flicking them off my pants or light colored pants. And I must have encountered 50 or 100 of them in 2 hours.
Wow.
None of them got into me. I was pretty well buttoned up, but still.
It's very clear. Serving on Concom's a blood sport.
I did see a fisher. My dog chased a fisher up a tree out there, and it's a big one too. Probably a male, like it was probably 8-9 pounds, something like that.
Wow.
They have these little Ewok faces, kind of round and beady eyes.
Creepy. Tom,
they're really cool.
Frost. I was curious because I live, in between Sawyer and Pleasant Street, and there's always a lot of peepers, and they came out, and then that frost for like 2 days of 20 degrees, very quiet, and then the peepers came back, but not as many. Does that kill off amphibians that come out too early, or?
I don't think so. They sure slow down, of course, when it gets cold, and maybe they had already peaked and a lot of them had laid their eggs. And once they've done that, they go back out in the forest. You got to remember, these frogs don't live in the ponds. They are woodland frogs, and they live out in the woods.
Yeah.
They just go to the ponds, and the salamanders too. They just go to the ponds to breed, and their larvae develop in the ponds. And once they have reached a certain stage, they march back out into the woods. So that's why I think it's important to have a pretty good sized woodland near the pond. If it's a bunch of residential streets and stuff with lawns and fertilizer and herbicides and all those things that are bad for amphibians.
People
they're not
spraying
gonna-
mosquitoes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Charlotte, 81 Don Street. Very quickly, Eric, two more things.
Start construction. That's my update. I inspected the erosion control barrier. So Will, when you start to see that happening, let me know if you have any questions if you drive by. My one note for them was they have to post the Mass DEP sign. That's part of the order conditions, but everything else is good to go.
Okay, and Sawyer Street, tree removal?
Yep, as I say, Chris and I walked the site earlier this week to do the tree inspection with the tree warden from the town and DPW. We marked up the plan. We found some additional trees that, given the impact of construction, they would be, it would be detrimental to them. And so we modified the site plan to just add those extra trees to the list. And Chris, we did get an administratively revised site plan from Tetra Tech, so we have that. And I think they actually already cut down the trees that we marked and delineated and clarified on the site plan. So the tree work looks like it's mostly done, except for the stump grinding, but they cut most everything down at this point.
Your phone hasn't started ringing off the hook yet?
Surprisingly, no, but they also have to post the Mass DEP sign before they start official construction. So they have some homework from the order conditions.
All right. Any 48-hour issues, concerns? Anything? No? Then I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Great.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Charlotte.
Good night.